Chapter 637. Imperial Capital, Dark Thunder Guard Headquarters. Li Ju-chung stood with his hands behind his back. There were 3 people behind him, all of whom were at the unity of heaven and man realm. They were the most powerful force of the Li family. 2 of them were Li Juning and his 4th uncle, who had once tried to kill Ling Shiqi. As for the other person, he looked 70% similar to Li Ju-chung. He was Li Ju-cheng's younger brother, Li Ju-ge. The 4 unity of heaven and man realm experts gathered here. None of them spoke, but the room was shrouded in a layer of invisible killing intent. After a long while, a small ball in Li Jueching's hand silently glowed, and lines of text emerged. He immediately said in a cold voice, "Ling Shiqi went to the 6 kingdoms of the western region alone. This is an excellent opportunity. This time, I don't want to see him come back. Do you understand?" Li Juning's eyes were incomparably sinister. Last time, he had frantically gone to search for Ling Shiqi's whereabouts. But in the end, Ling Shiqi had snuck back to the imperial capital without anyone noticing. This had caused him to feel greatly ashamed, and he had even been secretly criticized by others in the Li clan. He cupped his fist and said, "Big brother, don't worry. This Ling Shiqi first took Ningyan County and then killed 2 of our top disciples. I'll make sure he doesn't return." Beside him, Li Juyu also nodded silently. As for 4th uncle, a trace of hesitation flashed through his eyes. In the end, he said, "To be safe, it's best if only the 3 of us go. No matter who meets Ling Shiqi, they can easily kill him. However, Ling Shiqi is cunning and has all kinds of mysterious techniques. It won't be easy to find him in the 6 western countries. 4th uncle, don't worry about this." Li Ju-chung smiled and said, "You just need to spread out and block the way back to the Thunder Flame dynasty. Take these things with you." As he spoke, he gave each of them a storage pouch. Li Ju-chung continued, "Inside this is a temporary array disk that I paid a huge price for. Once you set up this array, you will be able to sense all the spiritual auras within 100 miles. Each of you will have a dozen of them. You will use this to set up an inescapable net in Zhu-Lu country and Lei-Yin dynasty. As long as Ling Shiqi dares to show himself, he will be discovered. That will be the time of his death." Only then did 4th uncle relax and say, "If that's the case, then it's absolutely safe. But you have to be careful," Li Jueching reminded. "You have to kill him outside the borders of the Thunder Flame dynasty. The Western Thunder Flame army is stationed at the border of the Western Baron Prefecture. If we make too much noise, they might notice us." Li Juning twirled the jade flute in his hand and said, "If I were to meet him, I would be able to kill him in one move. I would definitely do it secretly." Li Jueching glared at him. "Don't underestimate that Ling Shiqi. It wasn't luck that he killed Li Zhangtao. Moreover, he entered the heavenly tomb not long ago, and his cultivation increased greatly. No one knows what he obtained in the heavenly tomb. No matter who catches him, they must do their best. You can't let your guard down." Li Jueching coughed and said, Understood. Ling Shiqi naturally didn't know that Li Jueching was going to kill him here. He even sent out 3 unity of heaven experts. He was still consolidating his cultivation in the Mansion of the Dead. He also calculated the time and waited until almost 24 hours had passed before stopping. It was still late at night outside. Moreover, an entire day had passed. There shouldn't be many people left in the royal mausoleum. However, Ling Shiqi still summoned the Gu King to hide his aura and used a secret technique to hide his body. In the royal mausoleum outside, after a day of tidying, it was basically repaired. However, there were still some formation masters strengthening the formation of the royal mausoleum to prevent people from sneaking in the future. The place where the coffin of the first king of the kingdom of Tuoba was originally placed had been replaced with a memorial tablet. Everyone was concentrating on setting up the formation. However, at that moment, a beam of red, blue, and yellow light suddenly lit up there. The light instantly attracted the attention of some people. However, when they looked over, the light had already disappeared. One of them rubbed his eyes and said, "Am I hallucinating because I'm too tired? There seemed to be a beam of light just now." It's not a hallucination. I saw it too. What's going on? Shoo. Another person suddenly said mysteriously, lower your voices. Have you forgotten where you are? It's normal to be a little strange. Don't make a fuss. Hurry up and set up the formation. You're right. Let's get to work. They didn't know that Lung Shiqi had directly teleported hundreds of miles away using the fate skill. When he stepped on the ground, the stone hanging in his heart was finally put down. After all, there were still Unity of Heaven experts near the royal mausoleum. Although he was confident that he could forcefully teleport away when he was in the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, that would arouse the suspicion of King Tuoba and Ing Yuan. Then, the result that Lung Shiqi wanted would not be as good as he wanted. The reason why he only teleported hundreds of miles away was because he still didn't know what the outcome of last night was. He looked left and right. His position was near a town. This town was where Ing Yuan's diplomatic corps was going to arrive at. Lung Shiqi was prepared to gather information here and see if Ing Yuan and the kingdom of Tuoba had really fallen out. He then entered the town and prepared to wait for the arrival of Ing Yuan's diplomatic corps. They didn't arrive until the afternoon of the second day. This was the bad thing about diplomatic corps. They had to maintain their honor, so they didn't move quickly. Lung Shiqi used the supercilious eyes and the Gu King's ability to quickly get the answer he wanted. Ing Yuan really did fall out with King Tuoba. Since that was the case, Lung Shiqi had completed the mission given to him by Heavenly Lord Heiyan. Now he had to carry out his own mission, which was to investigate all the members of the diplomatic corps. There was no need to investigate the Starfall dynasty anymore. Yuan Ji and the other 5 demonic cultivators were dead. Yuan Ji was the only one left. Other than them, there were no problems with the rest of the diplomatic corps. Although Yuan Ji was still alive, Lung Shiqi heard that he had disappeared. Even if he returned to the diplomatic corps in the future, Lung Shiqi would be able to recognize him instantly as long as he closed the door. Therefore, the investigation of the Starfall dynasty and the hidden dangers were resolved. As for the kingdom of Tuoba, there was no need to continue investigating. They had offended the Starfall dynasty and couldn't even protect themselves, let alone plot against the Thunderflame dynasty. Therefore, Lung Shiqi planned to return and investigate the diplomatic corps of the Golden Tribe, the Great Moon Kingdom, the Jushur Kingdom, and the Bailu Kingdom. With his supercilious eyes and the Gu King's ability to hide, it was easy to investigate these things. He just had to travel for a while. Chapter 638. More than a month passed quickly. During this month, Lung Shiqi went back and forth between the 6 countries of the Western region and inquired about various small countries. He really found something fishy. In order to get rid of these hidden dangers, he also experienced many dangers. Fortunately, he passed through them safely. Of course, with his personal ability, he couldn't investigate everything clearly. As for the rest, he had to leave it to his Dark Thunder Guards. At this moment, Lung Shiqi was between Zhu Road Country and Bailu Country. He opened the system map and prepared to teleport back to the Western Desolate Province. When the system map opened, Lung Shiqi noticed one thing. A few hundred miles away from him, there were tens of thousands of people fighting fiercely. From the clothes of these people, it was clear that they were from Zhu Road Country and Bailu Country. Lung Shiqi was also slightly surprised. At this time, the Bailu Country's diplomatic group should have arrived in the Western Desolate Province. Moreover, they could only pass through Zhu Road Country. This meant that the 2 sides had reached a certain agreement. But why was there a conflict again? As long as it had nothing to do with the Thunderfire dynasty, Lung Shiqi couldn't be bothered. However, he still teleported to the vicinity of the battle and hid. Then he saw hundreds and thousands of green soul fragments flying over and merging into his body, nourishing his physical body and spiritual power. At the same time, Underworld also absorbed all of these souls. In the blink of an eye, there were more than 1,000 souls in Underworld. There were a total of 3 conditions for Underworld to level up. The first was to recruit 2 members of Underworld. Lung Shiqi had invited Tooting and Princess Carol to Zhu Road Country. This condition was fulfilled. The second condition was to absorb 3,000 souls. This condition was originally the most troublesome for him. Coincidentally, he came across the conflict between Zhu Road country and Beilu country. There were tens of thousands of people fighting each other. It had just started and more than 1,000 people had died. Therefore, it wouldn't be difficult for him to collect 3,000 souls. He couldn't help but sigh at his good luck. Lung Shiqi hid nearby and absorbed the souls while observing the battlefield. The overall strength of Zhu Lugui's side was slightly weaker. First of all, they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. In comparison, they were at least a quarter less than Beilu country. Furthermore, there were 50 to 60 spirit casters in the Beilu nation. Spirit spell casters had always been valued, especially when they joined a dynasty or a small country. They would be treated as VIPs. This did not mean that spirit casters were definitely stronger than ordinary spirit cultivators, but in this kind of large-scale war, spirit casters were simply too useful. For example, the 50 to 60 spirit casters from the Beilu kingdom were using large-scale spirit spell techniques that could instantly kill a large number of people. There were also some spirit casters who were using some restrictive spirit spell techniques, which provided great convenience for their own side. Although they were few in number, their overall effect was no less than 1,000 spirit cultivator of the same level. Lung Shiqi thought to himself, "It seems like Beilu State came prepared." Zhu Lu State was caught off guard. The battle was abnormally intense. Not long after, Zhu Lugui showed signs of defeat. The generals leading the charge had already begun to break out of the siege. In the end, the battle ended with Beilu State's complete victory. Only a few hundred people from Zhu Lu State managed to escape, but Beilu State also lost a lot of people. As for the exact number, Lung Shiqi was the clearest. This was because his underworld had more than 5,000 souls. As a result, the conditions for underworld to level up were all met. Lung Shiqi first left the place and prepared to level up underworld. However, when he saw that it required 20,000 system coins to level up underworld, he felt a little heartache. He did not have much system coins on him, so he could only use his various resources to exchange for system coins. Fortunately, he was now rich. Even if he exchanged 20,000 system coins, he still had a large amount of resources left. Lung Shiqi's heart moved and entered underworld. He also saw the system prompt. Territory upgrade conditions have been met. Do you wish to spend 20,000 system coins to level up territory? Yes. Lung Shiqi did not hesitate. However, a strong repulsive force immediately appeared beside him and pushed him out of underworld. He was forced to return to the outside world. Only then did he realize that another system prompt had appeared. Territory upgrade requires 1 natural day. During the upgrade period, you will not be able to enter the territory. Lung Shiqi understood. At this point, if underworld was to level up again, it would be Tier 3. It seemed that it was similar to the system's upgrade. Both required a certain amount of time. Anyway, it only required 1 day. Lung Shiqi did not mind. Then, he summoned the Gu King and transformed it into a pair of colorful glass wings and flew into the sky. He flew 1,000 feet in the air and headed straight in the direction of the Western Wilderness Province. He estimated that he only needed to fly for another 1,000 miles and wait for his fate skill to cool down. Then, he would be able to return to the Western Wilderness Province. A few hours later, Lung Shiqi was flying peacefully. However, suddenly, his whole body trembled. An extremely strong sense of danger rushed to his head. Immediately, several invisible forces suddenly appeared in the air. These forces were invisible and untouchable. However, the terrifying power within them caused Lung Shiqi to turn pale with fright. Boom! Lung Shiqi instantly activated the wild demon blood beast form. Then, several invisible forces approached him. They seemed to be something like a blade or a sword. They were extremely sharp. After coming into contact with Lung Shiqi, they easily cut through his wild demon blood beast form. Several hideous wounds were torn open on his body. Even the wings on his back were torn apart. Lung Shiqi was shocked. He knew very well how strong his wild demon blood beast form was. However, it was still so easily cut open. It could even be said that if it were not for the layer of granite shield on the surface of his body, his limbs would have been broken. There was no need to think too much about such a powerful attack. Only a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm could do it. Lung Shichi fell from high up in the sky. Waves of gray nirvana wind rose around his body, forming a gentle wind that supported him to land on the ground. At this moment, an elegant figure walked out with a jade flute in his hand. He said in surprise, "You're not dead? As expected, you have some skills. It was not in vain for me to come and kill you personally." This person was Li Juning, who had specially come to kill Lung Shichi. It could only be said that Lung Shichi's luck was not too good to be able to encounter Li Juning. If he did not fly back directly, but used the fate skill to teleport, he would not have encountered Li Juning and the other masters of the unity of heaven and man realm. Previously, he happened to encounter the battle between the Beilu Kingdom and the Zhu Kingdom. Therefore, he absorbed tens of thousands of souls and met the requirements for the Mansion of the Dead to upgrade. This was considered good luck. But then again, if it were not for the fact that the Mansion of the Dead needed a natural day to upgrade, Lung Shichi could not escape into the Mansion of the Dead and could only fight Li Juning head-on. Luck was really illusory. As the saying goes, every peck and every drink is predestined. Perhaps this was his predestined tribulation. Chapter 639. Of course, Lung Shichi didn't have time to care about this. He stared at Li Juning with cold eyes. Although he had never seen this person before, Li Juning and Li Jucheng were brothers and looked similar. Lung Shichi could conclude that Li Juning was here to kill him. He thought that Li Jucheng would deal with him when he came to the West Desolate Province, but he didn't expect that Li Juning would block his way back. The most important thing was that there were not many people who knew that he left the West Desolate Province and entered the 6 nations of the West. To be more precise, there were no more than 10 people. Then, how did his whereabouts leak out? This meant that he had Li Jucheng's people around him. Was it Gao Yi? Was it Lian Yi? Or the Dark Thunder Guard of the West Desolate Province? Lung Shichi pondered as he probed. "May I know who you are?" "You, and I don't seem to have any enmity. Why do you want to kill me?" "Humph." Li Juning snorted and said, Lu Xingji, rumor has it that you are very smart, but I think you are just so. Forget it. I have no interest in a dead person. Hurry up and take your head back to report." Li Juning held the jade flute horizontally, and a continuous flute sound came. There seemed to be a pair of gentle hands comforting one's soul, making one sink into it unknowingly. Strangely, the flute sound ignored Lung Shichi's ears and directly hit his soul. Lung Shichi's starry sea suddenly shook, and his primordial spirit immediately bloomed. From the outside, it could be seen that Lung Shichi's huge spiritual power surged out, and the back of his head shone brightly, almost blocking 70 to 80% of the flute sound. Li Jucheng's eyes flashed with surprise. "I didn't expect you to have condensed a primordial spirit. You are really amazing. If I don't kill you today, you'll be a big problem in the future." His killing intent grew stronger, and the flute sound suddenly changed, becoming like a stormy sea that swallowed everything. The invisible sound power came from all directions, and suddenly dozens of bloody wounds appeared on Lung Shichi's body. Lung Shichi opened his Byakugan, but to his surprise, even his Byakugan could not capture the invisible blade. He immediately formed a seal with his 4 arms at the same time. In an instant, a dragon flame formation with a radius of several hundred feet appeared. It was as if a golden pillar of fire had suddenly appeared, burning the air. At the same time, a mass of dense, earthy yellow light gathered, forming a semicircular light shield to protect him. Lung Shichi used both the 9 Palaces fire formation and the earth pulse at the same time. He could not see where the sound attack came from, but as the pure gold earth dragon flame continued to surge, it almost covered the entire area within several hundred feet. The violent flames unintentionally burned away most of the sound attack. Even so, Lung Shiqi could see that the 9 fire pillars were being cut apart. Fortunately, he could also catch the traces of the invisible sound blades. He activated the earth pulse and tried to deflect the sound blades with anti-gravity. However, the shield of the earth pulse was broken apart after a series of noises. The anti-gravity could not block the invisible sound blades at all. Fortunately, the pure gold earth dragon flame and anti-gravity had reduced the power of the sound blades by more than half. Lung Shiqi's body lit up with a golden Buddhist light, and a sacred and solemn aura spread out. Invincible Vajra divine art. The evil and frenzied evil demon blood beast body and the sacred invincible Vajra divine art were activated at the same time. Lung Shiqi's demonic body was dyed with a layer of golden light, and the two completely opposite auras coexisted perfectly on his body. After being weakened, the invisible sound blades swept over and hit Lung Shiqi's body with a series of ding, ding, dang, dang, dang sounds of metal colliding. At a glance, there were only a few faint white marks on his body. Li Juning's expression became even more sinister. He had already attacked 3 times, but he had not killed Lung Shiqi. Although Lung Shiqi looked like his flesh was torn open, Li Juning knew very well that Lung Shiqi was not seriously injured. At most, it was just some superficial wounds. He could not help but exclaim in his heart, "What a powerful body!" Li Juning had extremely detailed information on Lung Shiqi, including all the spiritual techniques and special secret techniques he had shown in front of others. For example, the 9 palace fire diagram and the earth pulse that Lung Shiqi was using were all recorded, and their characteristics were also written down. However, Lung Shiqi's invincible Vajra divine art was not in the information, especially the defensive power of the invincible Vajra divine art. It seemed to be even stronger than that of frenzied, evil demon blood beast body. One had to know that when Li Juning had attacked Lung Shiqi, he had broken through the defense of frenzied, evil demon blood beast body, but now he could not break through the invincible Vajra divine art. Damn it, this brat was still hiding something. Li Juning was in the unity of heaven and man realm, but after 3 moves, he only managed to slightly injure Lung Shiqi, which made him feel a little embarrassed. Lung Shiqi could roughly tell that Li Juning was in the early stage of the unity of heaven and man realm through these few moves. However, Li Juning and Li Zhangtao were both in the early stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, but Li Juning relied on his own abilities to break through, so he was much stronger than Li Zhangtao. Now that the Mansion of the Dead was closed, it would take at least a few hours for him to level up successfully. The Fate skill was also on cooldown, so there was no way he could drag it out. Now there were only 2 paths in front of him, either escape or fight. However, when he was ambushed, the wings that the Goo King had transformed into were cut off, and he could no longer fly. If he wanted to rely on the remnant wind lightning steps to escape from an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm, it would be unrealistic. Then, the only path left was to fight to the death. Lung Shiqi took advantage of the moment when Li Juning's attack was interrupted. He was unwilling to be beaten up passively. His hands quickly formed a seal behind his back, and the Nirvana remnant wind howled. However, these hurricanes did not directly rush towards Li Juning. Instead, they spread out and merged with the fire pillars in the 9 palace fire formation. The wind helped the fire, and the fire pillars formed by the red-gold earth dragon flames directly turned into 9 raging hurricanes that swept through the world. At the same time, Lung Shiqi's main body held a long spear with both hands. The spear was stained with golden scales, and a piercing crimson, cold air rose around him as he pointed it at Li Juning. The 9 dragon flame hurricanes burned everything and intertwined with each other, instantly trapping Li Juning. However, Li Juning's expression did not have a trace of panic. In the eyes of others, the 9 palace fire formation that merged with the red-gold earth dragon flames and Nirvana remnant wind was extremely powerful, but in his eyes, it was still lacking. At this moment, he was staring at the long spear in Lung Shiqi's hand, because he recognized that it was the 10 Directions floating snow spear. It was the 10 Directions floating snow spear that originally belonged to Li Zhongtao. Lung Shiqi actually used Li Zhongtao's weapon to deal with him, which made Li Juning feel extremely insulted. He laughed sinisterly and said, "You think you deserve to use the 10 Directions floating snow spear? Die." As soon as Li Juning's voice fell, the jade flute blew. The sound was sonorous and strong, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were charging fearlessly. In the void, countless invisible spears formed by sound appeared in an instant, wrapped in boundless killing intent, and stabbed towards Lung Shiqi. Chapter 640. Lung Shiqi's long spear shook and thousands of spear shadows appeared like a surging wave. The clearly sharp spear shadows formed a golden wave that rolled backwards. What was strange was that the golden waves were mixed with traces of crimson ice rivers, leaving behind strange ice crystals wherever they passed. Countless sparks flashed in the sky. An ear-piercing sound spread in all directions. At the same time, the dragon flame hurricane suddenly gathered and went to kill Li Juning. Li Juning knew that Lung Shiqi could use multiple spirit techniques at the same time, but he could do it too. As he blew the sound kill spear to kill Lung Shiqi, he stepped lightly and his body floated like a ghost, shuttling back and forth in the raging flames. Although he was occasionally touched by the pure gold earth dragon flame, the clothes on his body had ice threads that flowed like light. It was unknown what material the ice threads were made of, but they were actually able to resist the pure gold earth dragon flame. Lung Shiqi's heart sank when he saw this. It could be seen that Li Juning had come prepared. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The Dark Thunder Guard headquarters had too much information about him. Moreover, his control over the crimson gold earth dragon flame was indeed too narrow. Currently, he only had the 9 Palace Fire diagram as a means to deal with it. The 9 Palace Fire diagram, supported by the pure gold earth dragon flame, was indeed very strong. It was enough to threaten a great expert of the unity of heaven and man realm, especially when encountering devil cultivators or spirit cultivators who cultivated cold chi. It had a very strong restraining effect. For example, Li Zhongtao was like this. Most of his ice spirit energy was suppressed by the pure gold earth dragon flame, which led to his death. However, Li Juning was completely different. He actually cultivated an extremely rare sound-type spiritual skill. Although the crimson gold earth dragon flame itself might have been able to affect Li Juning was already prepared. He had a treasure that could restrain flames. As a result, the heavenly earth dragon flame was actually unable to play any role. Since this was the case, Lung Shiqi's heart hardened. The Dragon Eye Hurricane that was originally a fusion of wind and fire was now rapidly repelling each other. The surrounding wind and fire spiritual energy became abnormally violent, and waves of heat continued to spread out. If there was a spirit pulse realm cultivator here, they would probably be directly blasted to death by the heat waves. The Lung Shiqi actually caused the crimson gold earth dragon flame and Nirvana Remnant Wind to explode. Li Juning's expression also changed slightly. In the face of such a powerful attack, no matter how fast he was, it was useless. He had no choice but to retreat. But once he retreated, the effectiveness of his sonic spear would be greatly reduced. On the battlefield above him, he had the absolute upper hand. Lung Shiqi's golden spear shadows had already been destroyed to pieces. As long as he had 1 or 2 more breaths of time, he would be able to break through them. In other words, if Lung Shiqi had not used the 7th level precious weapon, the floating snow spear of 10 directions, he would have been defeated. We can't retreat, Li Juning secretly decided. Since the beginning of the fight, Lung Shiqi had surprised him several times. If he retreated this time, not only would he have a good opportunity to severely injure Lung Shiqi, but he would also be very aggrieved. He, a realm of oneness of heaven and man, was forced to retreat by a realm of gang spirit. He absolutely could not allow this to happen. Anyway, I have the ice silk cold clothes on. Even if I have to resist the crimson gold earth dragon flame, I am not afraid. He thought so, and then the sound of the flute became more intense. The sound that was enough to pierce the eardrum shook the world, and even the air twisted a few times visible to the naked eye. Bang, bang, bang. The waves of spear shadows, transformed by Lung Shichi's golden waves of stormy waves, were completely shattered in an instant. Li Juning's sonic spear was a little stronger. If he was really hit by these sonic spears, even if he activated Wild Demon Blood Beast Body and Vajra Unbreakable Force at the same time, it was very likely that he would die here. However, Lung Shichi had already prepared a backup plan, because as the golden spear shadows swept, crimson ice crystals were left behind. He changed the gesture in his hand, and a gust of cold air diffused from those ice crystals. In the blink of an eye, the cold wind whistled above the sky, and the endless cold force condensed into a piece of hell. It was crimson hell. Lung Shichi didn't expect the crimson nether prison to be able to block Li Juning's sonic spears. What he wanted was for the crimson nether prison's aura to permeate all the sonic spears and make them completely reveal themselves. As expected, the sonic spears were wrapped in crimson hell, and all of them were covered with a layer of faint crimson cold air, and this strange cold air also restrained the speed of the sonic spears to a certain extent. Seeing that crimson hell was effective, Lung Shichi used remnant wind thunderlight steps to quickly retreat. Li Juning immediately shouted, "You want to escape?" Just as he was about to chase, Lung Shichi waved his hands, and there was a loud rumbling sound. The crimson gold earth dragon flame and the remnant wind of Nirvana exploded. The extreme flames and the power of Nirvana raged wildly, and the surrounding thousands of feet directly turned into a huge pit dozens of feet deep. Li Juning was also engulfed by the explosion. However, there was a layer of invisible sound barrier around him. Even if the pure gold earth dragon flame touched him, it would be blocked by the ice silk frost armor. Therefore, he was able to traverse through the purgatory. However, what awaited him was colorful flying flowers that filled the sky. In an instant, the flying flowers slowly floated down from the sky, dazzling and dazzling. At this moment, Li Juning's eyes also showed a brief loss of consciousness, but a pendant on his neck shook gently, waking him up again. What an exquisite illusion. It can make me fall into it unknowingly. Fortunately, I prepared something to break the illusion in advance. Otherwise, he might have really escaped. Li Juning was in a daze. Just as he was about to command the sound spear to kill Lung Shichi, those brilliant flowers suddenly turned into streaks of sword chi. Each petal was a streak of starlight sword chi, and the sword chi layer upon layer covered the sky. From afar, it was clearly a flower that was constantly blooming. All the sword chi in sight began to spin rapidly again, and countless starlight sword chi enveloped Li Juning like a sword prison. This was the dazzling flower that incorporated the level 6 spiritual technique, Sword Fury Wildflower. Rip! Li Juning drew 5 strings in front of him with his 5 fingers. Then, he continued to play with his 10 fingers. Guqin sounds surged out, and the sound waves spread out with a sharp rhythm. Wherever they went, the void was torn apart, and all the sword chi was cut into nothingness. Moreover, these ripples were extremely fast, and in less than a breath, they arrived at Lung Shichi's side. Lung Shichi did not seem to have expected Li Juning's attack to be so powerful and fast. He could not react in time and was hit by the ripples. His wild demon blood beast body and Vajra, invincible divine, art could not withstand the sound waves, and he was cut in half at the waist by Li Juning. However, Li Juning did not laugh. Instead, he frowned because he felt that Lung Shichi should not have been killed by him like this. Ever since they fought, Lung Shichi seemed to be in an absolute disadvantage and could die at any time, but he always had a way to survive, so Li Juning did not think that Lung Shichi would die like this. Chapter 641. At this moment, 5 multicolored phantoms suddenly appeared and flew in 5 different directions. Li Juning showed an expression of "I knew it. How dare you use a mere illusion technique in front of me?" Although he couldn't tell which illusion was the real body of Lung Shiqi, for a spirit cultivator like him who cultivated sound wave techniques, he didn't lack large-scale spiritual techniques. He didn't need to know which one was the real body. He could just kill them all. The crimson hell in the sky could no longer stop the sound spear. Li Juning gently waved his hand, and the sound spears were divided into 5 parts. Then, they tore through the air and shot directly at the 5 illusions of Lung Shiqi. 4 of the illusions were instantly obliterated. Li Juning sneered. The last one must be the real body of Lung Shiqi. The sound spear fell and pierced the illusions into a sieve. However, Li Juning frowned. He knew that Lung Shiqi's body was strong. Even if he died, he couldn't be penetrated so easily. The only explanation was that all the illusions were fake. Li Juning suddenly felt like he was being played. What he wanted to know the most now was where the real body of Lung Shiqi was. How did Lung Shiqi sneak away under his nose? Li Juning's perception was fully activated, but he still couldn't find anything. He immediately took out a formation plate. This was the detection formation that Li Jucheng gave him. He also used this thing to find the aura of Lung Shiqi flying in the sky in advance. So he had the opportunity to intercept and kill him. But his face suddenly darkened, because even this formation couldn't sense the aura of Lung Shiqi. How could this be? Even if Lung Shiqi was flying in the sky, the formation could sense it. How could it not find him now? He must be nearby, Li Juning said to himself, and there was a hint of disbelief in his eyes. In fact, Lung Shiqi was deep underground at this moment. He had replicated the method he used when he was hunted down by the gang spirit realm experts of the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect on the South Divine Peak. He used the lustful flowers as a feint to attack, while he used the Hand of Earth to sneak into the ground. Lung Shiqi had not used the Hand of the Earth for a long time. Now he felt an indescribable smoothness when he used it. He was like a fish in water or a dragon in the sea. His speed was extremely fast. He didn't care too much about it. Perhaps this was the effect of his high cultivation. He frantically dived underground, and at the same time pulled away from Li Juning. The reason why he was not detected by Li Juning was that there was a little bug on his shoulder, which was the Goo King. Now, Goo King was also seriously injured. The wings on his back were all broken, and there was blood flowing out. Fortunately, Goo King's concealment ability was still there, helping Lung Shiqi to conceal his aura. There was no way Li Ju would let Lung Shiqi escape. He took out a drum as tall as a man from his mustard seed bracelet, clenched his fist, and punched the drum. Boom! It was like a sudden clap of thunder on the ground. Even people dozens of miles away could hear it clearly. With Li Juning as the center, the world around him shook. A strange rhythm surged, and the surrounding space began to distort slightly. Li Juning closed his eyes. At this time, all the places where the sound wave passed through were within his range of perception. What was different from before was that this time, the range of his perception also included the sky and the ground. After 2 breaths, Li Juning suddenly opened his eyes, and a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. He shouted in a low voice, "So you're hiding underground. You still want to run? Come out." Boom! He struck the surface of the drum with his fist, and all the force struck the ground. Immediately, the ground within a radius of several kilometers started to shake like the surface of a lake, and waves of powerful force shattered everything beneath the ground. Lung Shiqi, who was escaping, felt a strong force coming towards him. He was shocked. Li Juning had discovered him. Helplessly, he was forced to return to the ground to avoid this attack. However, this also meant that his escape had failed. Seeing Lung Shiqi break out of the ground, Li Juning punched with both fists. Waves of sound waves attacked. It was as if the entire world was filled with the sound waves. There was no way to avoid it. Lung Shiqi secretly took a deep breath. He clenched his fists, and the left and right sides of his body shone with black and white light, and soared into the sky. The black and white light intertwined. With a dragon's roar, an yin-yang dragon that was nearly 300 feet long appeared in the sky above. Moreover, the dragon horns of this yin-yang dragon were dark gold in color. A dragon's aura spread out, and it seemed to give the yin-yang dragon a trace of life. Floating dragon, Taishu. Li Juning's expression also became serious. Lung Shiqi's information also recorded this move. This was also his strongest move. As long as he broke through Floating Dragon, Taishu, Lung Shiqi would no longer be able to resist. As soon as the roaming dragon appeared, all the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the surroundings instantly became chaotic. The heaven and earth spiritual energy that Li Juning, who was in the unity of heaven and man realm, was most proud of was suppressed to the extreme. The sound waves that were just like the end of the world dissipated on their own. However, Li Juning's expression was still the same. He took off a ring on his finger and crushed it. A blurry figure appeared behind him. The figure suddenly turned into wisps of gas that intertwined with each other. Finally, it condensed into a protective spirit shield around Li Juning. This kind of spirit shield looked very ordinary. Even a low-level spirit cultivator in the spirit transformation realm could do it. However, Li Juning knew that this was a protective spirit shield left behind by his Li family's ancestor. It could completely withstand the full force attack of a mid-stage Unity realm cultivator. In order to kill Lung Shiqi, he had spent a lot of money. The floating dragon soared through the sky. It suddenly opened its big mouth and swooped down. Wherever the floating dragon went, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was destroyed. The 5 elements were reversed, and yin and yang were reversed. This force that was enough to change the color of heaven and earth blasted on Li Juning's protective spirit shield. In an instant, a dazzling light shone for hundreds of miles. However, no sound came out. It was as if even the sound of the battle was swallowed up. When the light dissipated, with Li Juning as the center, the ground within a radius of tens of thousands of feet had sunk more than 100 feet deep. It was really barren. However, Li Juning was still standing in the same place safely, without any damage. However, his face was much paler than before because the protective spirit shield around his body was on the verge of collapse. This was the protective means left by the Li family's ancestor. Under the attack of Lung Shiqi, who was in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm, it was almost broken. Didn't this mean that Lung Shiqi now had the strength to kill a spirit cultivator in the Unity Realm alone? If Lung Shiqi broke through to the Unity Realm, who in the Li family could kill him? No, by that time, they should be worried about whether Lung Shiqi would kill them. A person with such terrible potential must not be allowed to live. Chapter 642. Li Juning swore to kill Lung Shiqi, but Lung Shiqi was also unforgiving. It was within his expectation that Yulong Taishu could not kill Li Juning. The long-lost blood-stained star devil saber was unsheathed. Suddenly, the devil chi rose and the evil spirit soared to the sky, including some ghost chi. The blood-stained star devil saber trembled in Lung Shiqi's hand and made an excited buzzing sound. Lung Shiqi could clearly feel the excitement of the spirit. It was the first time since he got the blood-stained star devil saber. During this time, he had been nurturing the saber, which made the spirit suffocate. In Li Juning's eyes, he did not expect that Lung Shiqi would have such a horrible, evil spirit. He could not imagine how many lives Lung Shiqi had killed. In fact, Li Juning still misunderstood Lung Shiqi. Although Lung Shiqi had killed a lot of people along the way, he had not condensed such a substantial evil spirit. It was mainly because of his passive skill of Hell Curse, which would absorb a certain degree of evil spirit while absorbing the remnant souls. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been bitten by the evil spirit and become a killing madman. Sooner or later, he would be besieged by many spirit cultivators. But Lung Shiqi himself practiced the 7 evil blood-killing formula and could use the evil spirit for himself. Moreover, Lung Shiqi's spiritual force was so strong that he had already condensed a spirit. In addition, he had the red gold, earth dragon flame, and Buddha's cultivation method, so it was easy for him to suppress the evil spirit. The violent, devilish energy churned endlessly. Lung Shiqi stood with his saber in front of him. The surging devilish energy formed a phantom of a demon god holding a devil saber. Lung Shiqi chopped down, and the demon god shadow behind him also chopped down. Suddenly, a saber light appeared, as if it could cut everything. Devil ephemeral bloom. Li Juning never thought that he would be in a passive situation, but he did not believe that Lung Shiqi could use powerful spiritual force one after another with the cultivation of the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Therefore, he decided to be safe and wait for the attack. As long as Lung Shiqi's spiritual force was depleted, he could only be slaughtered. He took out the big drum again, and sound waves gathered around him to form an invisible sound barrier. Buzz. Before the evil spirit's blade's strength sound, the blade was constantly shaken by the sound barrier. It had signs of collapse at the edge. Lung Shiqi's strength's blade's blade sound, but with a loud ding, the demon blade was blades at heaven's blade was bounced off. Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed slightly. Li Juning's invisible sound barrier had the same effect as the earth pulse, which made the devil ephemeral bloom that he had accumulated almost no effect. The reason why he did not use the ephemeral bloom was that he knew that Li Juning had a treasure that could block illusions, so the effect of the ephemeral bloom would be greatly reduced. But the devil ephemeral bloom could not hurt Li Juning at all. Ha ha! Li Juning sneered. Seeing that Lung Shiqi was obviously exhausted, he said, "The stronger your attack, the stronger my sound barrier will be." Well, you have no spiritual force, right? Let's see if you can survive this time. Li Juning was about to kill Lung Shiqi, but he did not know that Lung Shiqi was also pondering over Li Juning's words. Suddenly, he had an idea. Lung Shiqi's blade force changed, and the evil spirit and devil chi around him suddenly disappeared. The originally ferocious and violent blade force became extremely slow. At the same time, Lung Shiqi's light of Buddha shone brightly behind him, and he slashed down. There was no killing intent in the blade intent, but it contained endless power to save the world. This was the merciful blade technique that Tu Deng had passed on to him. The blade slashes Bodhi, exterminates evil, and saves the world. Buddha ephemeral bloom. Buddha's light of all living beings. The strange blade light fell, ignoring Li Juning's sound barrier, and directly slashed his body under Li Juning's shocked gaze. Your sound barrier can block most attacks, and the stronger the attack, the more likely you will be shocked. But Buddha ephemeral bloom has no killing intent. It does not want to kill you, but to save you. The merciful light of Buddha's light of purification enveloped Li Juning. As he was in the oneness of heaven and men realm, his path of cultivation was also stained with a lot of blood and karma. Under the influence of the power to save the world, a layer of karma, fire, suddenly ignited all over his body. Li Juning suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an endless hell, and there were bursts of sharp pain all over his body. The terrible thing was that this pain did not come directly from his body, but from his heart, from his soul. Even his soul was starting to burn. Li Juning hugged his head and wailed. His body and soul were being punished by karma, but his eyes became more and more fierce. His eyes had turned blood red, and there was only endless killing intent in them. Even if he was tortured, he had to kill Lung Shiqi first. Lung Shiqi had used the Great Void Swimming Dragon and the two ephemeral bloom moves in succession. Now, he had less than 20% of his spiritual power left, and the chi, blood, and mental power in his body had been greatly consumed. If Li Juning attacked again, he might really die here. At this point, his only chance was the secret method recorded in the Heavenly Star Technique, the Falling Star Technique. The Falling Star Technique could allow Lung Shiqi to burst out superpower in a short time, but the price was that he would lose the most advanced star of chaos forever. Judging from his current cultivation at the 4th level of Gang Spirit Realm, it meant that he had to sacrifice his current cultivation and drop to the 3rd level of Gang Spirit Realm. This was not just a level difference, but a huge gap between the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm and the early stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Cultivation was not easy, and who would want to lose his cultivation? But cultivation was not so important in the face of life and death. As long as he was alive, he could still cultivate his cultivation back after some time. But if he lost his life, how could he talk about cultivation? In Lung Shiqi's spiritual star C, his mental power had locked on a 4th order star, and he was ready to use the falling star technique at any time. At this time, Li Juning's whole body was blooming with blood. In order to resist the burning of the hellfire, he had to start burning his essence and blood. Then, he pointed out a finger, and the spiritual power between heaven and earth immediately gathered crazily. The finger seemed to directly break the space, and a very thin thread in the air quickly shot toward Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi had begun to prepare to use the falling star technique, but at this time, he suddenly remembered something. Immediately, he showed a panicked look. He seemed to want to struggle and escape, but his speed was far slower than that of the black thread. The black thread streaked across, and Lung Shiqi's legs below his waist continued to run forward, but his upper body had already fallen to the ground. Lung Shiqi dead. Chapter 643. Puff. Li Juning could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Looking at the body of Lung Shiqi that had been cut in half, he was still a little worried. He endured his injury and once again sensed the breath of Lung Shiqi. When he confirmed that the breath of Lung Shiqi had completely dissipated, he was secretly relieved. He finally killed him. Before Li Juning intercepted and killed Lung Shiqi, he had never expected that it would be so difficult to kill a man in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. He had prepared the ice thread cold clothes and treasures that could ignore illusions. In this case, he even used his life-saving trump card to barely kill Lung Shiqi. He had thought that he could finish the battle with just a few moves, but he was forced to burn his essence and blood and use his trump card, which caused him serious internal injuries. He could not imagine how he could kill Lung Shiqi if he did not have the ice thread cold clothes and the spiritual weapon that could resist illusions. Li Juning thought about it carefully and realized that he might not be able to do it. Fortunately, I am well prepared this time. No wonder Li Jueqing values him so much. Even a lion will do its best to catch a rabbit. I can't underestimate any opponent in the future. Ahem, Li Juning reminded himself, but he suddenly coughed violently again, because he was still entangled by the hellfire at the moment. If he was in his heyday, he could suppress it, but now his battle strength was greatly reduced. He could only take a few elixirs and adjust his breath on the spot, try to get rid of the hellfire. But suddenly, a figure appeared behind him. Who is it? Li Juning noticed in an instant. He turned around abruptly and saw a man with hundreds of starlight gems all over his body. This man was Lung Shiqi. Lu Xingji? You, how can you still be alive? Li Juning was immediately shocked. He had just confirmed that Lung Shiqi's breath had completely disappeared, and even his body had been cut in half. How could he not be dead? Li Juning glanced to the side. The two halves of the Lung Shiqi's corpse had disappeared. Now, there was only a straw doll lying there. This was the substitute doll that Lung Shiqi had bought from the system shop. It could help him block a fatal attack. Lung Shiqi had used the substitute doll to save his life. However, he did not run away this time because he realized that the substitute doll did not simply block the attack. Instead, it changed time when he was about to die. To be more precise, he had reversed Lung Shiqi's time a little bit, which happened to be the state before he used the two ephemeral blossoms. At this time, Lung Shiqi still had half of the spiritual power in his body. His qi, blood, and spiritual power were also relatively sufficient, especially when Lung Shiqi saw that Li Juning had also suffered heavy internal injuries and was surrounded by hellfire. Was this not the best opportunity to kill Li Juning? Li Juning did not have time to be shocked. He could see the cold, killing intent in Lung Shiqi's eyes. He knew that only one person could survive today, Although I don't know what method you use to escape with your life, since I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Li Juning said viciously, but Lung Shiqi ignored him. Only then did Li Juning notice that Lung Shiqi's eyes had turned gold and silver. In addition to the killing intent, there was also indifference. He looked at Li Juning as if he was looking at a stone on the side of the road. Lung Shiqi had used the substitute doll to escape, but he had indeed experienced life and death once. The horror of death was still imprinted in his heart. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. He, who had been reborn by going back in time, had also entered an extremely mysterious state. Lung Shiqi opened his arms. The 360 spiritual cavities in his body became brighter and brighter, including the mysterious star Atlas carved on his body, began to flicker. Immediately after, starlight flowed around his body, and streams of light shot out. In an instant, the sky darkened, and the bright sun in the sky suddenly turned into a starry sky. At the same time, Star Atlas flew out from Lung Shiqi's body. The galaxy flowed, the nebula changed, and the space suddenly became a starry universe. Heavenly cosmic star gang. Li Juning looked at all this in a daze. As a master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, he should not be in this state. But at this time, he could not feel any trace of spiritual power of heaven and earth, as if he was no longer in the original world. How could this not shock him to the core? The most powerful thing about the realm of oneness of heaven and men was that he could use the spiritual power of heaven and earth. Now, he had completely lost this reliance and was injured. Now, he could only exert the combat strength of the late stage of Gang's spirit realm at most. This kind of combat strength was rare in normal times. But if he wanted to kill Lung Shiqi again with this kind of combat strength, Li Juning himself was not sure. Lung Shiqi's gold and silver eyes flashed a trace of khaki color. Suddenly, the stars in the whole starry sky turned khaki, as if there were countless Saturn stars. Then, a burst of strange energy sprinkled down, which contained both gravity and anti-gravity at the same time. Lung Shiqi tapped his foot lightly, and his body slowly floated up. He stood in midair and looked down at Li Juning. With a thought, the stars in the sky flickered continuously, and an extremely powerful gravity suddenly appeared. Even the earth seemed to be wailing. Li Juning was pressed down by the infinite gravity and was instantly pressed to the ground. Now he could not move at all. He could not even blink his eyes. All the blood in his body was stagnant, and his bones were on the verge of collapse at any time. If it went on like this, it would not be long before he was smashed to pieces. Li Juning finally began to be afraid. He had already felt the breath of death. He was horrified and said, What is this? He could not understand. If Lung Shiqi had such a means, why didn't he use it at the beginning? Why did he wait until now? In fact, Lung Shiqi did it at will. He did not know that he had such an ability. Of course, Li Juning could not just wait for death. He opened his mouth with difficulty and gently spat out a syllable. Oh! Immediately, a faint sound wave spread out. It seemed very inconspicuous, but wherever the sound wave spread, all the gravity returned to heaven and earth and no longer existed. This was a secret method that Li Juning had obtained from ancient times. It was said that when practiced to the great perfection realm, everything in the world would return to its original state. He had only learned a little bit after practicing for more than 10 years, but this little bit of knowledge had become his biggest trump card and killing weapon. However, the price of this move was also very high. Li Juning's body was aging at a speed visible to the naked eye. This secret method was overdrawing his life. The sound wave spread out, and a small field was propped up in Lung Shiqi's heavenly star atlas. Li Juning broke free from the gravity and was about to escape. Yes, he was a grandmaster at the oneness of heaven and men realm. He had come to kill Lung Shiqi, but now he wanted to escape, because he did not want to die. However, how could Lung Shiqi let him go? Lung Shiqi put his palms together, and the heavenly star Atlas suddenly burst out with boundless holy light. Huge Buddhist lotuses suddenly appeared, and at the same time, countless stars in the heavenly star atlas gathered in an instant. Wrapped in the Buddhist light, they formed a giant palm shadow that covered the sky. The Buddha's palm, the palm shadow, slowly fell, and every inch it fell seemed to make heaven and earth tremble slightly. Li Juning was frightened, but he did not dare to stop. Even though he knew that his chances of escaping were not high, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. At this moment, a yellow light flashed, and under the extreme pressure of gravity, it was as if the palm shadow was pushed from behind. The Buddha's palm instantly smashed down. What ancient secret arts! What strange sound waves! They were all destroyed like paper under the Buddha's palm. The Buddha's palm destroyed all of Li Juning's means. When it fell, gods and demons would retreat, and Buddha would be boundless. The shocking Buddhist light shone for thousands of miles. When the Buddhist light dissipated, only a palm print with a radius of several miles was left on the ground. Other than that, there was nothing else. Li Juning, a grandmaster at the oneness of heaven and men realm, died. Chapter 644. Lung Shiqi stood in place and looked at his palm in a daze. Li Juning was dead. At this moment, even he himself could not believe that he had such strength. It was not until the system notified him that the underworld had absorbed the soul that he confirmed that Li Juning was really dead. At the same time, he was also healed by the power of the remnant soul. He looked at the huge palm print again and could not help but mutter, "Did I really do this? Am I that strong?" He even began to doubt himself. If he knew that he was so powerful, why would he be forced into a corner by Li Juning? However, now was not the time for him to be in a daze. Such a big movement would definitely attract the nearby spirit cultivators. Moreover, Lung Shiqi did not think that Li Jucheng would only send Li Juning to kill him. So the most important thing now was to leave. He took a step forward, and his figure instantly appeared 100 feet away. Lung Shiqi was surprised again because he did not use the remnant wind lightning steps. Instead, he took a light step. How did he cross a distance of 100 feet? Only then did he realize that there seemed to be a very strange feeling between him and the ground under his feet. That feeling could not be described with words. Lung Shiqi frowned slightly. Then, a light flashed under his feet, and he appeared 1,000 feet away, as if he had traveled through space. What a magical feeling! I clearly did not use any spirit energy, but I can do something that even a rank 7 movement technique can't do. It's as if this land is my world, and I can control it at will. Lung Shiqi thought. He pressed his palm down, and his body sank into the ground. What made him even more surprised was that he was moving faster underground than on the ground. Being wrapped in the aura of the earth made Lung Shiqi feel even more intimate. In a few breaths, he moved several miles away. Someone is coming. However, suddenly, Lung Shiqi sensed 2 powerful spirit energy auras in the range of his Byakugan. They were both in the realm of unity of heaven and man. They were rushing towards the place where he and Li Juning were fighting at an extremely fast speed. They must be people who came to kill him. He had to escape as soon as possible. Lung Shiqi once again summoned the Gu King to help him conceal his aura. While he was underground, he was like an earth spirit that moved quickly underground. Soon enough, he was 15 kilometers away. Bai Yan's vision could no longer see the aura of the 2 union of heaven and man experts. At this time, the 2 men also came to the place where Lung Shiqi and Li Juning had just fought. They were Li Jugu and Li family's 4th uncle. As soon as they arrived, the first thing they saw was the huge palm print. Both of them frowned. 4th uncle said with a tone of disbelief, "Everything within a radius of a few miles has been destroyed. I'm afraid that this place will be barren for the next few hundred years. To be able to do this, one has to be at least at the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm." But where did a late-stage heaven-man unity realm expert pop out from? Where are Li Juning and Lu Xingji? 4th uncle's cultivation was at the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. His words were very convincing. Li Jugu, who was standing opposite him, was also puzzled. We sensed Li Juning's aura not long ago, and there were also violent fluctuations of spiritual power. This means that they were still fighting. Even if someone died, they shouldn't have disappeared. This is too unexpected. Could it be that when Li Juning intercepted Lu Xingji, he was detected by the experts at the border? Fourth Uncle's heart was very heavy. Now that Li Juning had inexplicably disappeared, was Lung Shiqi dead or not? No one knew. Li Jugo asked, "Fourth Uncle, what should we do now?" He didn't have a clue either. The three of them had split up and used the array formation to monitor a huge area in order to assassinate Lung Shiqi. It seemed that Li Juning had met Lung Shiqi. In the minds of Li Juning and Li Jugo, Li Juning could easily kill Lung Shiqi. Even if Lung Shiqi was not weak, it was impossible for him to escape from Li Juning's hands, because Li Juning's cultivation method and spiritual skills were very special. Although his cultivation was at the early stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, his real combat power was definitely comparable to the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. Moreover, Li Juning also had various treasures that could restrain Lung Shiqi's heavenly fire and illusion, and the life-saving means left by the Li family's ancestor. Therefore, they did not think that Li Juning would die in the hands of a spirit cultivator at the middle stage of the gang spirit realm. In this way, they were a little confused. Fourth Uncle pondered for a moment and said, "Since we have decided to kill Lu Xingji, he must die. Otherwise, there will be endless hidden dangers in the future. Let's not worry about Li Juning. I don't think he will die so easily. Maybe he is in trouble and temporarily hides. Now let's split up to look for Lu Xingji. We must not let him return to the Western Wilderness Prefecture." Okay. Li Juge nodded heavily. The two immediately separated and used the formation to continue to look for Lung Shiqi. They would never dream that the reason why Li Juning's aura disappeared was because of the Heavenly Star Gang, the Buddha's palm, and that mysterious power. Everything about Li Juning was wiped out. At this moment, Lung Shiqi was still desperately running away. However, his speed was gradually slowing down. Looking carefully, his gold and silver eyes slowly began to return to normal, and that strange power was also fading. Not long after, he withdrew from that miraculous state. Only then did he find that there was something sticky on his face. When he touched it, he found that it was sticky blood. It turned out that unconsciously, Lung Shiqi was bleeding from his 7 orifices. At this moment, he suddenly felt as if a bomb had been thrown into his brain. The inhuman pain stimulated his brain and almost made him faint. The primordial spirit in the spiritual sea was also dispirited and was almost on the verge of collapse. His spiritual power was like a river that had been drained for decades, dried up to an unimaginable extent. Lung Shiqi, who was deep in the ground, suddenly stopped. He held his head and his whole body trembled in pain, but he resisted the urge to make a sound. He directly took out a large variety of elixirs from his mustard bracelet and swallowed them all. This pain lasted for 2 to 4 hours before it began to gradually subside. Lung Shiqi was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely and his face was weak. He suddenly recalled that he seemed to have experienced such a situation once before, and it was when he killed the Li brothers in the heavenly tomb. At that time, he also used a mysterious power to kill the Li brothers with a flip of his hand. After that, his spiritual power was also exhausted. But this time, it was much more serious than that time. So what was that power? Lung Shiqi endured the pain in his head and thought carefully. His eyes flashed, and he suddenly remembered what the shadows in the heavenly tomb had said. For words appeared in his mind. The power of law. Chapter 645. The power of law was magical and mysterious. He had touched it by chance in the tomb of heaven, but he had only heard a few words about it. The way he killed Li Juning was similar to the way he killed the Li brothers. And Lung Shiqi found that the two methods seemed to have something to do with Earth. To be more precise, it had something to do with gravity. In the tomb of heaven, he had used gravity similar to a black hole, which absorbed and crushed everything. Not long ago, he had formed a gravity space in which he could control gravity and anti-gravity at will. Even Li Juning, who was in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, could not move. If what he guessed was true, how could he use the power of the law of heaven and earth in the gang spirit realm? He clearly remembered that those Tianyuan realm experts in the tomb of heaven were still groping and trying to comprehend the power of the law of heaven and earth, but they could not get it. How could Lung Shiqi, who was in the gang spirit realm, do something that even Tianyuan realm experts could not do? This was also what confused Lung Shiqi the most. He wanted to try again, but unfortunately, he had now withdrawn from that mysterious state. It was like he clearly felt that he was holding something in his hand, but when he looked down, there was nothing. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. Of course, he had no time to explore now. Although he slowed down a lot, he still had to desperately swim underground for fear of being caught by the other two oneness of heaven and men of the Li family. Lung Shiqi dragged his seriously injured body and kept moving forward. All the strength in his body was almost exhausted. He was basically supporting himself with a strong will. He did not know how long he had been in a daze. Just as his vision became more and more blurred and he was about to faint, he suddenly saw a system prompt. Mansion of the Dead has been upgraded successfully. When Lung Shiqi saw this message, it was as if he had seen a life-saving straw. He used the last of his consciousness to transmit himself into the Mansion of the Dead. As soon as he entered the Mansion of the Dead, Lung Shiqi did not even have time to see the changes of the Mansion of the Dead after the upgrade. He fell to the ground and fainted. His battle with Li Juning had overdrawn too much of his strength, and he had inadvertently triggered the power of the laws of heaven and earth that he was not supposed to master. Coupled with the fact that he had been running for a long time, even if his willpower was strong, he could not hold on any longer. This was especially so when he knew that entering the underworld was equivalent to saving his life. Once he relaxed his mind, all the pain and burden that he had been suppressing would explode out, causing him to faint. However, Lung Shiqi did not know that after he lost consciousness, a thick cloud of pure black gas suddenly appeared and wrapped around him. From afar, it looked like a sticky cocoon. Wisps of mysterious energy entered his body and rapidly healed his injuries. About a day later, Lung Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the black energy surrounding him. He was startled at first, but he also found that his injuries had unknowingly healed by more than half. His primordial spirit and spiritual energy had recovered by 60 to 70%. Even his blood essence had been replenished by quite a bit. What is this? Its healing effect is actually so good? Lung Shiqi was puzzled. Originally, in his initial plan, it would take at least 1 or 2 months for him to recover from his injuries. And this was only healing. If he wanted to return to his peak state, it would probably take about 3 months. He had been prepared to recuperate for a long time, but after he woke up from his sleep, he was almost healed. This made him feel pleasantly surprised and a little incredulous. He could not help but think to himself, is this the benefit of the underworld's upgrade? Thinking of this, the black gas around him slowly disappeared. He could finally see the underworld's current appearance. However, Lung Shiqi looked around and suddenly showed a surprised expression. After the underworld's upgrade, it had expanded a lot. Lung Shiqi thought that this upgrade would be the same. In fact, as he expected, he could no longer see the end of the underworld. The radius of the underworld was probably more than hundreds of miles. If it was just the expansion of the underworld, of course, Lung Shiqi would not show such an expression. The main reason was that the underworld was no longer a flat surface. At this moment, he was in front of the underworld's gate. The underworld's gate was dozens of feet tall, like a huge towering wall. There were countless bones on the wall, which was extremely terrifying. Looking back, the road to the underworld meandered for an unknown distance, as if it was leading to an abyss. And the river of forgetfulness was hanging upside down, like a river hanging in the 9 heavens. The bridge of helplessness was hidden in a large cloud of gray fog. It was blurry, mysterious, and faintly discernible. Then, a mountain range appeared behind him. The mountain range was rugged and was completely shrouded in layers of black wind. Ghosts were everywhere, and ghosts were howling. At the top of the mountain range, there was a pure black hall, the Hall of Enchantment. The thousands of souls that Lung Shichi had absorbed not long ago were walking on the road to the underworld. The first batch of souls had already climbed up the mountain range and were walking toward the Hall of Enchantment at the highest point. Lung Shichi looked at all this in a trance. He murmured, "No wonder it took a day for the underworld to upgrade this time. The changes are really great." These were just the superficial changes of the underworld. Lung Shichi also found that the system of his territory had also changed. First of all, the number of ghost slaves had changed from 2 to 4, and with the upgrade of the underworld, the strength and ability of the ghost slaves would also be improved. Lung Shichi immediately called Li Gui over. At a glance, he found that Li Gui's ghost chi was really stronger, and his eyes were more flexible. The aura he exuded was comparable to that of the gang spirit realm. Lung Shichi was very satisfied that he had one more gang spirit realm expert with strange abilities, especially now that the Gu King was also injured and could not provide him with an increase in strength. Li Gui made up for it. Thinking that there were still 3 ghost slaves, Lung Shichi moved his divine thoughts and quickly found Li Juning's soul among the many souls. Seeing Li Juning's muddled soul, Lung Shichi's expression turned cold. He directly turned Li Juning into a ghost slave. Li Juning immediately knelt on the ground, his head almost buried in the ground. He said, "Master." Seeing Li Juning, who almost killed him, kneeling in front of him, Lung Shichi could not help but feel a little happy. At the same time, he secretly reminded himself that he could not be careless at all times. He thought that with his strength, he was invincible in the gang spirit realm, but there were still too many people in the world who could kill him. As the saying goes, there is always someone better than you. Unless he was standing at the top of the world, he had to keep a vigilant mind at all times. This time, he didn't know who had leaked his whereabouts, but he had to find out who it was. Moreover, he did not know why Li Juning could find him. At that time, he was flying in the sky, but he was still found. Therefore, all information regarding his combat prowess had long been thoroughly investigated. Fortunately, he had obtained a Buddhist cultivation technique from Tuding. Furthermore, the prizes that he had drawn from the system were still somewhat secretive. The most important point was that this time, if it were not for the substitute doll, he would have been dead. Originally, Lung Shichi thought that with the wild, evil demon blood beast body, the Vajra unbreakable divine skill, and the secret protection of the granite shield, there was almost no one who could break his defense. But in front of a spirit cultivator in the oneness of heaven and men realm, it was still a little weak, so he still had to prepare some life-saving means and trump cards. Chapter 646. Lung Shichi retracted his thoughts. He noticed that Li Juning had the power of the spirit aperture realm after being turned into a ghost slave. He was more powerful than Li Gui. Perhaps this was the benefit of the underworld's upgrade. Lung Shichi thought about it. It wasn't appropriate to call this ghost slave Li Juning anymore. Since you were proficient in the musical assassination technique, you shall be called the Sound Ghost. "Thank you for the name, Master," the Sound Ghost said. His intelligence was higher than Li Gui's when he was born. Lung Shichi sent Li Gui and the Sound Ghost away. He looked at the peak of the underworld. There was a huge palace at the peak of the mountain called the Lost Soul Palace. All the dead who came to the underworld would be judged there. Based on the sins they had committed and the merits they had accumulated, they would be decided which of the 6 realms of reincarnation they would enter in their next life. As Lung Shichi thought about it, his figure instantly appeared in front of the Lost Soul Palace's entrance. This was a function of the underworld's upgrade, teleportation. As the master of the underworld, he could move freely in the underworld. No matter how far he was, he could arrive directly. This was his privilege as the master of the underworld. Lung Shiqi stood in front of a lost soul palace. At this moment, there were already scattered souls that had arrived, but they all stopped at the entrance. He estimated that he would have to wait for the next upgrade of the underworld before he could open the Lost Soul Palace's entrance and let these souls in. Lung Shiqi was very curious about what would happen to the souls after they went through the Lost Soul Palace. Since he thought about the underworld's upgrade, he immediately went to the nearby Fengdu City. The Fengdu City's entrance was still closed. Lung Shiqi walked forward and immediately saw the conditions for the underworld's next upgrade. Underworld Territories current level, Tier 3. Conditions for Underworld Territories upgrade. 1. Recruit 3 members of the Underworld, 0/3. 2. Collect 2 high-level souls, 0/2. 3. 40,000 system coins. Seeing these 3 conditions, Lung Shiqi wasn't too surprised about the first and third conditions. He needed to continue recruiting members, and Lung Shiqi already had a preliminary candidate in mind. As for the system coins, that was within his expectations. After all, he had a lot of resources now, so he could still afford it. What surprised Lung Shiqi was that his second condition. In the past, he had only allowed him to absorb some souls, but this time, he was absorbing high-grade souls? Then what was a high-grade soul? In the past, Underworld's upgrade would require thousands or even thousands of souls. However, this time, there were only 2. Just from this number alone, one could tell that high-level souls were not simple. Lung Shiqi suddenly thought of Li Gui and Sound Ghost. Could it be that only the soul of a spirit cultivator can be considered a high-level soul? If that was really the case, then it would give him a headache. Up until now, even though he'd killed 2 great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, it was extremely difficult every time, and he'd almost lost his life. If he were to wait until he could kill a unity of heaven realm expert head-on, he would still have a long way to go. However, it wasn't completely impossible. After the battle with Li Juning, Lung Shiqi's spiritual power cultivation had improved, and he could use all his spiritual techniques more smoothly. In particular, the power and characteristics of the Heavenly Cycle Star God Shield made Lung Shiqi very satisfied. The self-proclaimed ability to isolate the spiritual power of heaven and earth could be said to be the nemesis of the unity of heaven and man realm. The most powerful aspect of the unity of heaven and man realm was the ability to mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth. The Heavenly Cycle Star God Shield could directly isolate the spiritual power of heaven and earth from the outside world, so the unity of heaven and man realm could only have the advantage of having more profound spiritual power in front of him. However, the problem was that the Heavenly Cycle Star God Shield was unique to the star race. If Lung Shiqi could kill his opponent, then it would be fine. However, if he used the Heavenly Cycle Star God Shield and failed to kill his opponent and was recognized, then he would be in trouble. Therefore, not only did he need a trump card to save his life, but he also needed a trump card to kill his enemy. When he thought of this, he suddenly remembered that he had used a challenge card before. The mission was to kill a spirit cultivator at the unity of heaven and man realm. Killing Li Juning should be considered as completing the mission of the challenge card. The reward for completing the mission was a chance to draw a top prize. He opened the system's lottery interface, and there was a top prize option. Lung Shiqi had also drawn top prizes in the infinite lottery in the past. For example, the Fate skill was a top prize, and it was also a means for him to travel thousands of miles in a day. Therefore, he was looking forward to this top prize. Lung Shiqi pressed the lottery button. A light flashed, and a very strange sword appeared in front of him. The reason why this sword was strange was because in front of Lung Shiqi, there was only a glaring sword shadow, and it did not have a physical body. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the top prize. Divine Sword Bright Consumable. Divine Sword Bright? Lung Shiqi looked at the name of the sword and began to search his memory. This sword seemed to come from a game world called Ancient Sword in his previous life. It was said that when this sword was forged, the 3 realms shook, and it was dazzling, hence the name. Lung Shiqi recalled the information about the Divine Sword Bright, and his eyes couldn't help but shrink a few times. If he remembered correctly, the Divine Sword Bright's biggest characteristic was to cut off all spiritual power connections in the world. One had to know that in this world, whether it was a spirit caster or a spirit cultivator, the spirit skills used were based on spiritual power. If he mastered the Divine Sword Bright, then wouldn't everyone be the same as an ordinary person in front of him? There were also the top sects, the 3 great dynasties, and the hidden families. All of them had large and small formations protecting them. As long as Lung Shiqi held this sword, he could easily break all the formations and barriers. Regardless of whether it was a battle between spirit cultivator or an attack on a sect, this was a genuine divine artifact. Perhaps this sword also contained some kind of powerful law of heaven and earth. Unfortunately, the Divine Sword Bright he drew was only a consumable item, which meant that it could only be used once. However, Lung Shiqi was not greedy. According to the system's rating, the Divine Sword Bright would definitely be classified as a god-level prize. And this time, his lottery draw was a top-notch one. Being able to draw a one-time use Divine Sword Bright was already a huge profit. Lung Shiqi held the sword shadow, and the sword shadow immediately sank into his arm. He lifted his sleeve and saw that there was an additional sword imprint on his wrist. As long as he activated it, he would be able to activate the Divine Sword Bright. Lung Shiqi wore the mustard seed bracelet on his wrist to cover the imprint, and then continued to cultivate and recuperate. After all, his injuries could not be healed in a day or two. As such, he stayed in the underworld for more than 10 days until he recovered 80 to 90% of his strength. Lung Shiqi opened his eyes, and a few rays of cold light flashed in them. It's time to find the person who leaked my whereabouts. Chapter 647. There were very few people who knew that Lung Shiqi had gone to the Western Desolate Province. He remembered that there were only 7 people present at the time. They were Inspector Yu Ruifeng, his right-hand man Li Hong, Duan Chun, and the other 2 inspectors. Apart from them were Lin Yi and Gao Yi. Among these people, Lung Shiqi eliminated Lin Yi and Yu Ruifeng. There was no need to mention Lin Yi. The enmity between her and Lung Shiqi had long been resolved. Moreover, Lung Shiqi had brought Lin Yi here under Heavenly Sovereign Black Flame's orders. If Heavenly Sovereign Black Flame had killed him first, he wouldn't have needed to spend so much effort. As for Yu Ruifeng, he had no motive. He was Eunuch Gao's man and was on the opposite side of Li Jueqing. It was almost impossible for Li Jueqing to instigate an inspector. Moreover, Lung Shiqi had saved his life. He had also wanted to pass his position to Lung Shiqi. Most importantly, there was no benefit for him to kill Lung Shiqi, so he eliminated him first. Then, only Gao Yi and Duan Chun were left. Among these people, the most suspicious ones were Gao Yi and Duan Chun. Gao Yi was Eunuch Gao's favorite adopted son, and Lung Shiqi was Eunuch Gao's personal disciple, as well as his favorite person. Although Lung Shiqi and Gao Yi had only met a few times and didn't seem to have any interactions, they couldn't compare to one conflict. That was, who would take over Eunuch Gao's position. Seeing that the Thunderflame dynasty was about to have a change in power, Eunuch Gao's position as one of the 4 great supervisors was most likely going to be removed. So who would take over? At present, other than the deputy supervisors, only Lung Shiqi and Gao Yi had the most hope. Therefore, in Lung Shiqi's opinion, Gao Yi had a motive to kill him. Moreover, they had fought in Xingji Pavilion before, so their relationship was not good. In addition, Duan Chun might have been secretly bribed by Li Jueqing. This Duan Chun was once Lung Shiqi's superior, but because he was jealous of Lung Shiqi's windfall, he secretly caused trouble for him. Later, Lung Shiqi directly replaced Duan Chunbei County's great supervisor position without giving him any face. Duan Chun might hold a grudge because of this, so he secretly sided with Li Jucheng and sold information about the Lung Shiqi. Of course, this was just Lung Shiqi's guess. He didn't have much interaction with the other people, so Gao Yi and Duan Chun were the most likely. Half a month later, Dark Thunder Manor in West Desolation City. There were very few people here because most of the Dark Thunder Guards had been sent out to scout for information. Only Unwavering and a few others were in the center to control the situation. Especially now that Zhu Lu Country, Bei Lu Country, and EU countries' diplomatic missions had entered West Desolation City. Zhu Lu Country had been staying in the West Desolation City's inn for a few days. These diplomatic missions were naturally received by people, but a lot of people were needed to secretly monitor them. As a result, as long as there were people who could be used, Dark Thunder Manor seemed empty. Yu Ruifeng constantly received information, but what he was most worried about was not this, but Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi had left West Desolation Province for the 6 countries of the Western region for more than 2 months. According to the information, the Starfall Dynasty's diplomatic mission was about to enter the country. When all the diplomatic missions arrived, they would go to the imperial capital together. Lung Shiqi should have returned long ago, but there was no news of him until now. He didn't care what Lung Shiqi found out. He was already worried about Lung Shiqi's safety. After all, going deep into the 6 countries of the Western region and involving the Starfall Dynasty was still very dangerous. If Lung Shiqi's identity was exposed, he might be left there. Just as he was worrying, Lian Yi walked in. Yu Ruifeng immediately stood up and cupped his hands. Miss Lian Yi. Lian Yi smiled faintly. Lord Yu, you're welcome. Then her smile disappeared. I just came to ask if Lu Xingji has returned yet. Yu Ruifeng shook his head. No, but Miss Lian Yi doesn't need to worry. You and I both know Lu Xingji's ability and strength very well. He won't easily get into trouble. That's true, but foster father thinks highly of him. If something really happens to him when he sneaks into the 6 countries of the Western region, it will be a loss for the Dark Thunder Guards. Alas. Yu Ruifeng sighed. That's true. Unfortunately, my Dark Thunder Guards are all busy, and those who spread information in the 6 countries of the Western region have not found him. Right now, no one knows where he is. While the two of them were talking, Yu Ruifeng's eyes suddenly widened, and his figure disappeared in front of Lian Yi. Lian Yi was puzzled at first, but then a huge sound came from outside. Along with the shaking of the ground, waves of terrifying spirit energy fluctuated continuously. Even Lian Yi, who was at the spirit aperture realm, couldn't help but activate her spirit armor to resist. What happened outside? Could it be that the envoys of the 6 countries of the Western region really brought people to cause trouble? Lian Yi exclaimed. She hesitated for a moment, then rushed out. However, when Lian Yi ran to the source of the sound, she was immediately stunned. She actually saw that half of Dark Thunder Manor had been blasted apart. Before she could even approach, she felt waves of Vajra power rushing towards her. It even caused her spirit armor to fluctuate. Just the aftermath was difficult for her, who was at the spirit aperture realm, to resist. Then, what kind of expert made a move in the Dark Thunder Manor? Unfortunately, Lian Yi didn't see who did it. She only saw a corpse lying on the ground. There was a huge hole in the chest of the corpse, as if some kind of power had pierced through the heart and killed him. What made Lian Yi's heart jump was that the owner of the corpse was eunuch Gao's adopted son. Gao, he was killed, and he was killed in 1 hit. Gao, he was an expert at the late stage of the spirit astral realm. How could he be killed in 1 hit? Could it be that the person who did it was an expert at the unity of heaven and man realm? At this moment, Yu Ruifeng was standing beside Gao Yi's corpse with a gloomy face. Just now, he suddenly felt an extremely powerful spirit energy appear in the Dark Thunder Manor. He immediately felt that something was wrong and rushed over as fast as he could. However, he was still 1 step too late. He didn't even see the person who did it. He only saw that person emitted a dazzling golden light and disappeared in a red, blue, and yellow light. Gao, he was eunuch Gao's favorite adopted son. He also held an important position in the palace. Now that he had died in the Western Baron County, and in the Dark Thunder Manor at that, Yu Ruifeng, the supervisor, could not escape the blame. While Yu Ruifeng hated Gao Yi, he couldn't help but be surprised by the killer's strength. Although he only saw the person's figure, he could tell that the person was definitely at the spirit astral realm. But Gao Yi was also at the spirit astral realm, the peak of the spirit astral realm. Gao Yi also practiced the cold magic book created by eunuch Gao. His strength was definitely not weak. How could he be killed before he even had time to react? The killer's strength was so strong. Lord Yu, what happened? Lian Yi asked in a trembling voice. Someone dared to kill Gao Yi in the Dark Thunder manner under Yu Ruifeng's nose. That person was really bold and powerful. Yu Ruifeng was about to speak, but there was another commotion outside the Dark Thunder manor. He frowned. Soon, a Dark Thunder guard hurried in and shouted, Lord Yu. Lord Duan Chun was suddenly killed. Yu Ruifeng suddenly emitted a fierce aura. How dare you offend me? You're courting death. Dozens of miles away from the western wilderness city, Lung Shiqi took back the spirit fox lotus bough and said to himself, no matter who betrayed me, I'll just kill them all. Chapter 648. A mysterious expert had killed 2 people in the Dark Thunder manor. One was the supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards, and the other was the adopted son of eunuch Gao. Although Yu Ruifeng had sealed off the news, the commotion caused by Lung Shiqi's attack was not small, especially when Duan Chun died in the crowd. Therefore, the news slowly spread. At this time, the Western Desolation City was very tense. Ordinary people might not feel much, but the city guards and the Dark Thunder Guards were in a state of panic. They did not dare to be careless in the slightest, for fear that something would happen to the people of the diplomatic mission. In the end, nothing happened to the diplomatic mission, but the Dark Thunder Guards were the ones in trouble. As a result, Yu Ruifeng could not help but suspect that it was the work of a certain diplomatic mission. But on second thought, of the 3 diplomatic groups that had arrived, the Zhulu country and the Beilu country were both vassals of the Thunderblaze dynasty. No matter how bold they wouldn't dare to assassinate the Dark Lightning Guards. Therefore, the Great Moon clan was the most suspicious. This was only a suspicion. In Yu Ruifeng's opinion, even if the Great Moon clan did not have good intentions, they would not cause trouble so soon after arriving in the Western Desolation City. Wasn't this too ostentatious? It would be too easy for people to associate it with them. Yu Ruifeng sat in his study. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. He could not figure out who did it, nor could he understand why Gao Yi and Duan Chun were killed. The 2 of them did not seem to have any connection. Duan Chun had never even heard of Gao Yi's name. Therefore, the 2 of them did not seem to have anything in common. However, the 2 of them were killed at the same time. It was clear that there was some connection. Sigh. Yu Ruifeng sighed deeply. Investigating the diplomatic mission and secretly protecting them had already given him a headache. Now that such a thing had happened, he did not know how to deal with it. Duan Chun's death was sudden, but Yu Ruifeng had someone who could temporarily replace the supervisor. At least it would not delay matters. However, Gao Yi was also dead. How could he explain this to eunuch Gao? Lung Shiqi had also disappeared for a long time. If something happened to him, Yu Ruifeng was afraid that eunuch Gao would directly chop him up with a knife. He had also specially ordered the city to be under martial law. He even personally tracked the assassin's aura, but in the end, it was to no avail. He had no choice but to reassign more people to protect Lian Yi and the several great inspectors, hoping that no more accidents would occur. As for the 3 diplomatic missions that had already arrived, they were all extremely shocked when they heard the news. There was actually someone who dared to kill someone in the Dark Thunder manor. This was a public slap to the Dark Lightning Guards and the Thunderblaze dynasty's face. Of course, they were more or less a little worried. Why didn't you kill them earlier or later? Why did you have to kill them after they had entered the Western Desolated City? Wasn't this turning the suspicion onto them? Therefore, Zhulu country's King Gus and the other 2 diplomatic missions were secretly cursing. Meanwhile, the murderer who killed Gao Yi and Duan Chun was hiding in the Western Desolation City, eating and drinking uncomfortably. Lung Shiqi had also been to the Western Wasteland City several times, but he hadn't had the chance to take a good stroll. Here, merchants from the 6 countries of the Western regions were gathered, and there were all kinds of rare treasures and exotic toys. It was indeed very lively. In any case, he had already killed the two most suspicious people. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, he purposely waited for a period of time before showing himself again. Since he had nothing to do, he would disguise himself and stroll around the western desolation city. When he was tired, he would find an inn to stay and slowly cultivate. Until 10 days later, Lung Shiqi swaggered into the Dark Thunder Manor's main gate. Not long after he walked through the gate, Yu Ruifeng and Lien Yi quickly walked over. Yu Ruifeng smiled from afar and said, "You're finally back." Lung Shiqi cupped his hands and said, "I ran into a little trouble on the way and was delayed for a while. Sorry for making you worry." Soon after, the three of them came to Yu Ruifeng's study. Lung Shiqi took out all the information he had gathered in the 6 countries of the western regions. Yu Ruifeng looked at it with rapt attention for a long time and said, "The information Lord Liu obtained is too precious. What you did alone is enough to match up to several hundred Dark Lightning Guards. No, this is already not something that can be measured by quantity. It can be said that Lord Liu used your own strength to complete more than half of the mission. I admire you, I admire you." He was full of praise for Lung Shiqi. Lien Yi also looked at Lung Shiqi with sparkling eyes. Lung Shiqi said a few words of modesty. Then he looked around casually and asked curiously, "Why didn't I see eunuch Gao Yi?" As soon as he said this, Yu Ruifeng and Lien Yi's expressions froze. Yu Ruifeng told him what had happened 10 days ago in a calm voice. Lung Shiqi immediately stood up with a shocked look. Then he said angrily, "How lawless! Who dares to commit murder openly in the Dark Thunder Manor? If I find out who it is, I will skin him alive and pull out his tendons to taste all the punishments in the world." Yu Ruifeng said, "Don't worry. I've also been chasing the assassin these days, but unfortunately, I found nothing. It can be seen that the man came prepared, and the assassin's strength is also very strong. Although he is in the gang spirit realm, he can kill Gao Yi instantly. It's really rare." Hearing that Yu Ruifeng didn't find anything, Lung Shiqi was relieved. What he was most worried about these days was that Yu Ruifeng would find some clues. After all, Yu Ruifeng was the inspector, and his investigation ability was absolutely top-notch. Now it seemed that he didn't suspect Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi sat down and said, "Now the Western Wilderness City is really troubled. I think the most urgent thing now is to ensure the safety of all the diplomatic missions. As soon as all the diplomatic missions arrive, we will set off for the imperial capital immediately." Yu Ruifeng nodded and said, "I think so too." 2 days ago, the diplomatic missions of the Jushur state and the Golden Tribe arrived. Only the people of the Tuoba state and the Starfall dynasty are left. When all the diplomatic missions leave the Western Wilderness Prefecture, the pressure on us will be much less. But I have reported Gao Yi's death to eunuch Gao, but I haven't received any reply. To be honest, I am also prepared to resign from my position as the inspector." Lung Shiqi knew that eunuch Gao would definitely suspect him, so he still had to go through eunuch Gao. He said, "Gao Yi's death is too strange, but it has nothing to do with Lord Yu. Eunuch Gao is a reasonable person, so I don't think he will blame Lord Yu. Actually, it doesn't matter to me whether he blames me or not." Yu Ruifeng said carelessly, "I was planning to resign from my position as the inspector to focus on cultivation. Maybe I will have a chance to make a breakthrough." Lung Shiqi chatted with him for a while, then excused himself. After that, he went into seclusion. Another half a month passed, and the diplomatic missions of the Starfall dynasty and the Tuoba state arrived at the Western Wilderness City. Yu Ruifeng and the city lord of the Western Wilderness City hit it off and arranged for all the diplomatic missions to set off for the imperial capital as quickly as possible. Of course, these people couldn't use the interdomain transfer formation, so they could only walk. And the speed of the diplomatic missions was very slow, so it would take them about 3 months to reach the imperial capital. Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet wouldn't be too far away. On this day, there were hundreds of different kinds of carriages lined up at the east gate of the Western Wilderness City, and there were also thousands of guards standing guard around these carriages. In places unknown to others, There were also groups of Dark Thunder Guards who were secretly scouting and investigating in advance. The 7 diplomatic missions set off for the imperial capital in such a grandiose manner. Chapter 649. The 7 envoys had made arrangements for their journey to the imperial capital. Every time they passed through a prefecture, they would be escorted by local guards and Dark Lightning Guards. After they left the Western Baron Prefecture, Yu Ruifeng's mission was considered complete. However, Lung Shiqi's mission was only half completed. Because he had to follow the envoys all the way to the imperial capital, he led a few of his guards as the vanguard. They had to investigate and clear all the hidden dangers a day or two before the envoys. In the past, this kind of task was very tiring. Moreover, the Dark Lightning Guards could not maintain a high level of concentration for long periods of time. However, with Lung Shiqi around, it was much simpler. He only needed to use the supercilious eye and walk around a few times. The only thing Lung Shiqi found troublesome was that it took too much time. At this speed, it would take nearly 3 months to reach the imperial capital. Wouldn't it be better to use this time for seclusion? In particular, Lung Shiqi had recently accidentally used the power of the laws of heaven and earth. He had originally planned to go into seclusion to comprehend it. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to continue escorting the envoys for the sake of merit. It was worth mentioning that he had once saved King Gus's life. The two of them had gone through a life and death situation together. Therefore, King Gus was very enthusiastic about Lung Shiqi along the way. He even introduced the other important ministers of the 6 nations of the western regions to him. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing along the way. Lung Shiqi really did discover some people with bad intentions. However, he was able to uncover these people in advance. As a result, he received praise from many people, including the 6 nations of the western regions and Crown Prince Ingyuan. 3 months later, the envoys finally arrived at the western gate of the imperial capital. Here, tens of thousands of guards and hundreds of Dark Lightning Guards stood in formation to welcome them. The Thunderfire dynasty had also sent several ministers, including Unigao. Unigao saw Lung Shiqi and nodded slightly. Lung Shiqi was able to smoothly bring the envoys to the imperial capital without any accidents. This was a huge contribution. This quest would not have gone so smoothly for anyone else. Only Lung Shiqi, who had Byakugan and Fate, could complete it so easily. Welcoming the diplomatic mission was a very tedious process. These people exchanged greetings at the city gate for a long time. Lung Shiqi directly handed over to Unigao and prepared to return to Xingji Pavilion to rest. When he brought his subordinates to the inner city, he discovered that there were many spirit cultivators from various sects and powers in the inner city. My lord, all the first-rate forces in the Thunderflame dynasty have a quota to attend the birthday celebration. Although first-rate forces are rare, the empire is a vast land with abundant resources. Right now, 99% of the first-rate forces are gathered in the imperial capital. Even if they can only send one person to participate in the birthday banquet, it's still not a bad idea for them to bring their disciples to see the world. Ifei-Chen quivered as he spoke. Lung Shiqi agreed with his words. The Thunderflame dynasty had a total of 36 counties, and each county had more or less first-rate forces. If a county had a first-rate sect, then there would be at most 2 or 3 first-rate forces. After all, just a first-rate sect alone would be able to occupy almost half of the county's resources. The rest would not be able to support a few first-rate sections. For example, Donglin County and Muchun County were the same. If a county did not have a first-rate sect, then there would be more first-rate sections. For example, the West Desolate County had 4 first-rate sects and a large number of second-rate sections. The further Lung Shiqi and the others went into the city, the more experts they met. Spirit astral realm cultivators could be said to be everywhere, and there were also quite a few unity of heaven realm cultivators. Only during the Emperor's banquet would they have the opportunity to see so many experts. Lung Shiqi returned to Xingji Pavilion and dismissed his subordinates. These few months, they had all been tense and should have had a good rest. Even Lung Shiqi was the same. But not long after he rested, Wu Diao came to the door. Wu Diao walked in and cupped his hand with a smile. "Congratulations, Brother Xingji, for making a great contribution again. I heard that you came back, so I invited you to a welcome dinner. I wonder if Brother Xingji would like to do me the honor?" Lung Shiqi knew that Wu Diao must have something to do with him, so he returned a salute and said, "Then it's better to be courteous than courteous." "Hee, but not now." Wu Diao suddenly smiled mysteriously and said, "You have to wait until the evening. I also invited 2 people to accompany me. At that time, we will congratulate Brother Xingji together." Lung Shiqi laughed secretly. He did not know what Wu Diao was up to. Anyway, he could be idle for a few days, so it was not impossible for him to relax a little. At night, Lung Shiqi finally met the other 2 people. They were Zhuge Puha and Di Chuan. They were more familiar with each other, so after greeting each other, Wu Thao said with shifty eyes, "I say, brothers, today is Brother Xingji's return. We should celebrate. Also, I have to say that Brother Xingji's luck is really amazing. Tonight is the Phoenix Stage Conference that only starts once a year. No matter what, we should go and take a look." Phoenix Stage? Phoenix Stage? What the hell was that? Lung Shiqi's head was full of bumps. He had never heard of these names before. He turned to look. Di Chuan also had a puzzled expression, similar to his, but Zhuge Puha's expression changed. Di Chuan asked, "Brother Wu, Brother Zhuge, what kind of place is Phoenix Stage?" Wu Diao smiled evilly and said, I say, the 2 of you have been in the imperial capital for quite some time, but you still don't know about Phoenix Stage? That is the place that all men yearn for the most, and it is the highest standard in the entire Thunderfire dynasty." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi's eyebrows jumped. He could already guess what Phoenix Stage was. Was Wu Diao planning to bring them to visit a brothel? If the Delta Orgi found out about this, he wouldn't know how to explain it. So Lung Shiqi subconsciously wanted to refuse. However, Wu Diao seemed to have predicted his reaction, so he spoke first. "Brother Xingji, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Phoenix Stage isn't as bad as you think. Those who can enter Phoenix Stage are all high officials and nobles. How could ordinary women catch their eye? That's why the ladies in Phoenix Stage are all good at singing and dancing. Everyone is more interested in singing and dancing than anything else. Especially since tonight is the Phoenix Stage Conference, it has attracted a lot of people. In addition, experts from all over the world have entered the imperial capital recently. This is a good opportunity to gather information. As for what Phoenix Stage is, let me keep you in suspense. Otherwise, it will be boring." Zhuge Puha also added, "I've been to Phoenix Stage before. It is indeed an elegant place. I'm also very interested in this Phoenix Stage. Brother Lu, why don't you come with us?" Di Chuan also nodded excitedly. The other 3 wanted to go, so Lung Shiqi didn't want to dampen their spirits. He could only agree. Chapter 650. While Lung Shiqi and the others were on their way to Mu Link, 3 people were sitting in a dark room in Dark Thunder Manor. They were Li Ju Cheng, Li Ju Gu, and 4th Uncle. 3 months ago, when Lung Shiqi and the 7 divisions returned to the capital, they already knew that their assassination had failed again. It was fine that they failed, but Li Ju Ning actually died at the hands of Lung Shiqi. They still couldn't confirm that Li Ju Ning was killed by Lung Shiqi, but it definitely had something to do with him. Ever since Lung Shiqi came to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, he began to stand out. Li Ju Cheng also tried to suppress him, but in the end, he made a great contribution to quelling the rebellion in Shantai County, slapping Li Ju Cheng's face hard. Later, Unit Gao sent Lung Shiqi to Ningyang County in order to counterattack. This time, he killed Li Zhangtao and took away his money tree. On the way back, Li Ju Cheng sent people to assassinate Lung Shiqi, but Lung Shiqi returned to the capital without anyone knowing. After entering the Heavenly Tomb, Lung Shiqi killed the 2 younger generation brothers of the Li family, cutting off the backbone of the Li family's next generation, causing the two sides to fight to the death. As a result, 3 Unity of Heaven Realm cultivators joined forces to kill Lung Shiqi. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed. Instead, they lost a powerful Unity of Heaven Realm cultivator. When Li Jucheng found out about this, he couldn't wait to rush to the Western Baron province to kill Lung Shiqi. However, he wasn't crazy. He couldn't do that, or else he would be in great danger. At the very least, he would lose his position as one of the 4 great chiefs. At the very least, even the Li family would suffer. This was because Li Jucheng was very clear that he and Eunuch Gao were enemies in the Dark Thunder Guards. Eunuch Shintu and Eunuch Hai also didn't have a good relationship with him. Most importantly, the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Venerable He Yin, already had the intention to weaken the Li family. Once these people seized the opportunity, they would spare no effort to suppress the Li family. In the worst-case scenario, the Li family might be directly destroyed. Therefore, Li Juecheng still resisted the urge to kill Lung Shiqi. However, he could not give up just like that. Since he could not use underhanded methods, he would use other methods. The 3 of them were gathered here to discuss how to deal with the Lung Shiqi head-on. Li Juecheng said coldly, "There's actually something else going on at His Majesty's birthday banquet this time. As Eunuch Gao's favorite disciple, Lung Shiqi will definitely attend. When that happens, we'll have a chance to kill him." "What opportunity?" Li Jugu and 4th uncle asked at the same time. After a series of failures and a huge loss to the Li family, even 4th uncle felt that Lung Shiqi had to die. Li Juecheng hesitated for a moment before saying, "There are only a few people who know about this matter." "Fine, there's no harm in telling you first. In fact, His Majesty is planning to select the crown prince at this birthday banquet." As soon as he said this, Li Jugu and 4th uncle were shocked. The current Emperor Lei Chengjuan's health was deteriorating. It was estimated that he could only last 2 or 3 years at most. Therefore, the struggle between the princes had become more and more intense. Even a few months ago, there was an assassination attempt on the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing. It was also from that incident that the princes began to fight with each other. In the past few months, several princes had either been driven away to their fiefdoms or sought refuge with a powerful prince. Currently, there were only 4 people who were most likely to become the crown prince. They were the eldest Prince Lei Haoyan, the 4th Prince Lei Haoran, the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing, and the 13th Prince Lei Haoyan. The eldest Prince Lei Haoyan had outstanding military achievements and had the support of many generals. He was also a great master in the unity of man and nature realm. The 4th Prince Lei Haoran's mother was the current empress. Although he was not the eldest son, he was still considered legitimate. Many of the court officials were in the empress's faction. Not only were there many masters around him, but there were also many strategists who gave him advice. The 13th Prince Lei Haoyun had only one thing, and that was that he was too similar to Lei Chengjuan. Just based on this point alone, he was Lei Chengjuan's most beloved prince. Especially now that Lei Chengjuan knew that he didn't have much time left, it wasn't impossible for him to willfully pass the throne to Lei Haoyun before he died. As for Lei Haoqing, he originally belonged to the middle of the line among the princes. It was because he had roped in the support of the 1,000 Illusionary Sword Sect. During this time, the 1,000 Illusionary Sword Sect had sent a large number of masters to oversee him. It could be said that he was in the limelight and had the capital to compete with the others. But then again, he was the one who had started this. Moreover, recently, all the first-rate and peak sects had gathered in the imperial capital. This meant that the other princes had the same idea. Now, they were vigorously trying to win over the various large sections. The power behind them was skyrocketing. As for who would be able to walk to the end, no one could say for sure. Li Jugu and 4th uncle were so shocked when they heard that Lei Changjun was preparing to announce the crown prince at the birthday banquet. However, they were also very confused. What did this have to do with them killing Lung Shiqi? Could it be that he wanted Lung Shiqi to offend one of the princes and then use the prince's power to kill Lung Shiqi? However, Lung Shiqi was not stupid. On the contrary, he was extremely shrewd. He would not easily offend a prince. After all, every prince had the possibility of becoming the emperor in the future. Li Jucheng raised his hand and laid down a layer of barrier. He was so cautious in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard and the Li family. It was obvious that what he was about to say next was very important. He said, "His Majesty is planning to open Void Scar Sky and let the princes use Void Scar Sky as a trial to determine the next crown prince." Hearing this, the other two's expressions of shock appeared again. The Void Scar Sky was one of the most valuable secret realms in the Thunderblaze dynasty. For example, the Heavenly Tomb was for experts to comprehend, and the Minor Chaos Paradise was for tempering oneself. As for the Void Scar Sky, it was a genuine secret realm. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth inside was unimaginably abundant. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this secret realm would not normally open. This was because the Thunderblaze dynasty had planted and cultivated countless treasures of heaven and earth in this secret realm. These treasures were constantly being nourished in the secret realm. It had been 100 years since the last time the Void Scar Sky opened. What kind of quality would the treasures inside be nourished to now? Even if they just went in for a stroll, they would be able to obtain rich treasures and materials. It was simply picking up money. Li Ju Gu and Fourth Uncle, the two unity of heaven and man realm cultivators, were extremely moved when they heard this. They wished they could go in and explore. At the same time, they also roughly understood Li Jucheng's intention, which was to kill Lung Shiqi in the Void Scar Sky. Li Jucheng said sinisterly, "You guessed right. Although the Void Scar Sky can only accommodate spirit cultivators below the unity of heaven and man realm, I have already arranged for many spirit astral realm experts. Ants can bite an elephant to death. No matter how strong Lung Shiqi is, it is impossible for him to survive the encirclement of so many spirit astral realm experts. However, just in case, I still need you to pay a price." Chapter 651. On the other side, Lung Shiqi had already arrived at the Curtain Pavilion with Wu Diao and the others. This place was very large, and the construction was very unique and elegant. If it were not for the beautiful ladies coming and going and the sound of bamboo, music everywhere, one would think that this was the residence of some refined expert. The four of them walked into the Curtain Pavilion, and a woman in her 30s or 40s with heavy makeup walked over. Although she was a little old, judging from her appearance, she must have been a rare beauty when she was young. Lung Shiqi, Di Chuan, and Zhuge Puha had all come in their own clothes, but Wu Diao had come in the official uniform of an envoy inspector. This woman immediately welcomed them with a smile. "Guests, please come in." Her voice was slightly hoarse, but it was precisely because of this that it gave off a faint charm. There was a hint of emotion in her eyes, and just a glance was enough to make Di Chuan blush slightly. Wu Diao immediately said casually, "Hurry up and arrange a private room and call over a few ladies. They have to be at least Earth Chief level." The woman's smile stiffened slightly. The ladies in the Curtain Pavilion were also divided into several levels, and among them, Heaven Chief and Earth Chief were the most precious. Not just anyone could receive Heaven Chief level ladies. On the contrary, it was extremely difficult to even meet a Heaven Chief. There were even some young masters who would fight to the death for the sake of a certain Heaven Chief. This was a common occurrence in the Curtain Pavilion. As for Earth Chief, although they were one level lower than Heaven Chief, they were still not something that could be directly ordered by ordinary people. They were also the signboards of the Curtain Pavilion. Envoy Inspector Wu Diao's status was not low, but if he were to call over 4 Earth Chief at once, he was still a little unqualified. What's more, with so many powerful cultivators gathered in the imperial capital, the Curtain Pavilion's business had become even more prosperous recently. The resources of Earth Chief were also in short supply. Wu Diao caught sight of the woman's expression, and his expression immediately darkened. Just as he was about to say something, Lung Shiqi directly took out his own command tablet. The command tablet of an envoy of eunuchs. The woman covered her red lips and almost cried out in surprise. Then she smiled and said, "So it's Lord Envoy of Eunuchs. This servant will go and arrange it for you." The woman brought the four of them into an exquisite room, then left for the time being. Sigh, even the identity of the envoy inspector is not useful here. Wu Diao muttered softly. Ever since he became the envoy inspector, it could be said that he had gained a lot of benefits from everything. This was the first time he had hit a wall. Lung Shiqi smiled. Sometimes identity was really important, and it was very convenient to do things. However, he didn't say anything because he noticed something very interesting. One of the walls in this room was actually transparent. Standing here, he could clearly see the scene outside. Not far from them, there was a strangely shaped high platform. It looked like a phoenix dancing in the 9 heavens. Wu Diao explained, "Muling's private rooms are all special. We can see the outside clearly from the inside, but the outside can't see inside." Lung Shiqi understood. This wasn't anything special. There were many similar things in his previous life. As for that high platform, it's the Phoenix stage. We're in for a treat tonight. Wu Diao chuckled. Hearing Wu Diao keep talking about the Phoenix stage, Lung Shiqi couldn't help but be curious. He didn't know what this Phoenix stage was. Not long after, 4 women with outstanding appearance, temperament, and musical talent walked in. Lung Shiqi and the others also had a rare moment of relaxation. More than 2 hours later, the room suddenly darkened. However, no one panicked. Everyone knew that the Phoenix stage was about to begin. Lung Shiqi also looked out with rapt attention, only to see a resonant phoenix cry suddenly resounding from the Phoenix stage. Following that, the phantoms of phoenixes and phoenixes spread their wings and soared into the air, crisscrossing in midair. It was truly dazzling. Immediately, the phoenix and phoenix phantoms froze in the sky. 2 figures slowly descended from the sky. One of them was a graceful beauty. When everyone saw her, their breathing couldn't help but quicken. Not to mention that this woman's appearance and figure could be called a stunner. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was devastatingly beautiful. Just her pair of purple eyes were extremely seductive. Even if one looked at it, one soul would be hooked. Even the girls in the Curtain Rain Pavilion were stunned. However, there was only one person in the audience who didn't have such a reaction. That person was Lung Shiqi. When he saw the woman, he almost spat out the tea he just drank. That woman was clearly 9 Leave, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Back then, Lung Shiqi had openly brought 9 Leave to the imperial capital. However, after entering the inner city, 9 Leave had disappeared without a trace. Lung Shiqi didn't stay idle after that. If he wasn't running around, he was in seclusion. So, he didn't know where 9 Leave went or what she was doing. Fortunately, he didn't hear any news of demon beasts. This meant that 9 Leave hadn't been discovered. For Lung Shiqi, this was enough. But he never would have thought that 9 Leave would actually come to the Curtain Rain Pavilion. However, Lung Shiqi thought about it again. This place might be quite suitable for 9 Leave. Legend has it that some demons deliberately came to brothels in order to absorb Yang Qi. Presumably, 9 Leave was in the Curtain Rain Pavilion because of this. Moreover, with 9 Leave's appearance, she could easily attract young and outstanding men. She could also absorb essence without anyone noticing. It was really a good choice. However, this wasn't a long-term solution. If someone noticed, there was still a chance to find 9 Leave. Lung Shiqi gently rubbed his head. He couldn't control 9 Leave anyway. As long as 9 Leave could protect herself, he was too lazy to care. Today, he would just pretend that he didn't see anything. At this time, Wu Diao and the others were a little lost in thought. They didn't notice Lung Shiqi's abnormality. 9 Leave landed on a high platform. She didn't sing or dance. Just a faint smile was enough to charm everyone. At the same time, another figure appeared. From the appearance, this was a great beauty that was not inferior to 9 Leave. The difference was that the other beauty was dressed very plainly, as if she only wore a coat. There was no jewelry on her body. But it was this kind of plain beauty that was even more precious in a place like the Curtain Rain Pavilion. However, Lung Shiqi took a closer look and found that the beauty's chest was flat. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her throat. There was a small bulge there. This was a handsome man with a peerless appearance. Phoenix stage, so that's how it is. Lung Shiqi suddenly understood. What a great phoenix stage. The appearance of the phoenix immediately caused a lot of saliva to be swallowed. Even if these people were rich and had extraordinary status, they couldn't help it when they encountered such a stunning beauty. The handsome man didn't make any extra movements. He just made a seemingly polite gesture and stood with his hands behind his back. When Lung Shiqi saw the gesture, he stood up with a swoosh. Chapter 652. Lung Shiqi's actions immediately woke up Wu Diao and the other two who were still in a daze. They regained their senses and clicked their tongues in wonder. Wu Diao even bluntly said, as expected of the Phoenix stage, not to mention that flirtatious woman, just that handsome man is enough to make people drool. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of hobby. He didn't suspect Lung Shiqi's actions. He thought that Lung Shiqi was too shocked. After all, in his impression, Lung Shiqi was a very lecherous person. In reality, the reason Lung Shiqi acted like this was because that handsome man's hand gestures were clearly the code for the Blood Seed plan. This person was the third person who had come to help him. Lung Shiqi frowned slightly. Inkfrost Ghostman had said that he would send 3 people to help him. When he first arrived in the capital, he had met Sulan and Feng Shaimo. One of them was his senior martial sister, while the other was the Blood Clothing Pavilion's pavilion master's personal disciple. However, the third person mentioned by Inkfrost Ghostman had yet to appear. Lung Shiqi had been on the move for a long time, so he had inadvertently forgotten about this matter. Only today did he remember that he had another helper. However, Lung Shiqi felt that it was strange. He had clearly just returned to the capital today, and he had only come to Curtain Link on the spur of the moment. How did Inkfrost Ghostman know that he would come to Curtain Link? Just as he was feeling puzzled, a scholarly man walked out of Phoenix stage. He first bowed to everyone before saying, "Honored guests, are you all satisfied with this year's Phoenix stage?" "Ha ha, satisfied, very satisfied." A slightly drunk young man slowly glowed with red light as he shouted, "Not bad. This year's 2 beauties on Phoenix stage are both peerless beauties, rarely seen in my life. What did you say this year? Just tell us directly." The scholarly man chuckled and said, "It's good that everyone is satisfied. The lady on my right is called 9 Leaf. It's very simple to become her guest. You just need to take out a high-grade Yao core. Whoever has the most precious Yao cores will naturally have a chance to get close to Miss 9 Leaf." As soon as he said this, many people in the crowd were stunned. Every single one of them was filthy rich. If someone were to ask them to take out spirit stones or treasures, every single one of them would be confident enough to do so. But this Miss Julie's condition was actually a Yao core. Actually, Yao cores weren't a very important resource, but the problem was that Yao cores were just too rare. In the entire Starfall continent, only the demonic Miasma Mountain Range and the northernmost wasteland could be found. Although a part of the demonic Miasma Mountain Range was within the Thunderblaze dynasty, it was still very far from the imperial capital. The extreme north was located to the north of the Northern Wei Empire. More than 90% of the people in the Thunderfire Empire had never been there in their entire lives, let alone obtain a demonic core. What gave them the biggest headache was that Yao cores were not only rare, but ordinary people wouldn't collect them for no reason. Therefore, there were very few people who could take out Yao cores, and even fewer who could take out high-grade Yao cores. This made many rich young masters stomp their feet in anger. Even if they went to buy Yao cores now, it would be too late. It would be a pity to miss out on this Phoenix stage and miss Miss Julie. The scholarly man had already expected everyone's reaction. He continued, "The beauty on my left has a single name, Hua. His condition is that whoever can give him the most beautiful flower in the world will be able to win the heart of the flower beauty." The most beautiful flower in the world? Many of the guests were confused. There was still such a strange condition. In the past, the Phoenix stage was basically a competition of wealth. Occasionally, there would be competitions of knowledge and strength. But this year, the requirements of the two beauties were really strange. Many of the people present had been hanging around the red light district for a long time. They really did have some rare flowers on them. Immediately, some people took out flowers with strange shapes and different colors. The inside of the stage became magnificent. The next segment was similar to an auction. The guests took out the corresponding items according to the requirements of the two beauties. Whoever could win the favor of the beauties will be able to get close to them. Wu Diao sighed. I don't have Yao cores or flowers. They really don't give me a chance. Dichuan also came back to his senses. He knew that he did not have the qualifications to participate, so he simply drank his wine and watched the show. Zhuge Puha had a thoughtful expression. No one knew what he was thinking. As for Lung Shiqi, he knew best why Julie wanted Yao cores. Julie's nature is really hard to change. Only Yao cores can help her recover her cultivation quickly. For her to be able to think of such a method, it can be said that her brain circuit is very strange. However, Lung Shiqi was most interested in the flower beauty. He carefully stared at Hua Mei's face and figure, and even searched through his own memories, but he couldn't find anyone similar to Hua Mei. This meant that Lung Shiqi had never seen this person before. However, the Ink Frost Phantom had said that the three helpers he had sent were related to him in some way. Then, where was the connection? Lung Shiqi planned to continue observing. At this time, the bidding for Julie was going on outside. There were only 5 or 6 competitors, and only these few people had high-grade Yao cores. In the end, an elegant young master won at the price of several level 6 Yao cores. Then, under everyone's envious gazes, he walked upstairs with Julie. What happened next was more interesting. Although the flower beauty was a man, there were quite a few people interested in him in a place like the imperial capital. Right now, there's a row of guests holding all kinds of flowers in their hands, offering them to the flower beauty. However, the flower beauty did not even spare them a glance, as if looking at them would dirty his eyes. One of them said anxiously, "Flower beauty, this is a level 7 treasure, beautiful water pear flower. Could it be that it's not as good as your eyes?" The flower beauty was not even willing to acknowledge this person, which made him so angry that he stomped his feet. In the end, he could only leave angrily. After about a quarter of an hour, all the people who had prepared flowers came one after another, but in the end, not a single one of them was favored by the flower beauty. He did not even spare them a glance. Some people began to feel indignant, feeling that the flower beauty was putting on airs. All of a sudden, fresh flowers appeared everywhere in the Curtain Rain Shrine. What was strange was that these fresh flowers were different in the eyes of different people. What everyone saw was the type that they liked the most. A figure arrived in front of the flower beauty. He used his fingers as a sword, and countless petals danced around the flower beauty. In an instant, they formed a huge flower that wrapped around the flower beauty, making him look like a flower fairy. "Does this flower catch the flower beauty's eye?" Lung Shiqi asked calmly. The flower beauty smiled gently. He was clearly a man, but he still gave off a breathtaking feeling. "Young master, please come in." Inside the private room, Wu Diao's jaw almost dropped to the ground when he saw this scene. He said in astonishment, "So, Brother Xingji likes this." Chapter 653. Above the Phoenix stage, there were 2 unique rooms. Lung Shiqi was currently in one of the rooms, and there was a person standing next to him. That person was no longer the peerless flower beauty from before. Instead, he was a masked man wearing the nether blood robe. There was a picture of flowers blooming under the moonlight on the mask. Seeing this mask, Lung Shiqi knew who this person was. He was one of the 9 bloody gown assassins of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Hua Luiwei. In Lung Shiqi's impression, Hua Luiwei was not only one of the 9 bloody gown assassins, but he also had the strength of the leader of the 9 bloody gown assassins. The only one who could compete with him was Lung Shiqi's chief master, Wu Xiang. Back then, these two were the most outstanding disciples of their generation. Now, they had become independent existences and were strong competitors for the next pavilion master. But because of this, Lung Shiqi secretly frowned. Out of the 3 helpers that Ink Frost arranged for him, 2 of them were competitors for the next pavilion master. Although Wu Xiang was not here, Sulwan and Lung Shiqi were both Wu Xiang's disciples. The 2 of them could also represent Wu Xiang. This meant that all the successors were gathered in the imperial capital. Lung Shiqi could not help but wonder what Ink Frost was trying to do. From another perspective, if Hua Luiwei really came to help him, it would give Lung Shiqi a lot of confidence. This person, who could be called the leader of the 9 Bloody Gown assassins, was definitely much stronger than ordinary unity of heaven and man experts. There were probably not many below Sky Origin Realm who could be his opponent, especially since Hua Luiwei was an assassin. If he's secretly assassinated, how many people could survive? If there was someone that Lung Shiqi wanted to kill the most, it would definitely be Li Jucheng, who had tried to kill him time and time again. But Li Jucheng was one of the 4 great chiefs. Not to mention that there were many experts around him. He himself was at the late stage of unity of heaven and man. Moreover, Li Jucheng had been one of the 4 great chiefs for so many years. He must have many unexpected treasures on him. Killing him was easier said than done. Therefore, even though Li Juecheng was on Lung Shiqi's must-kill list, it would take a long time to kill him. Now, Hua Yue's appearance gave Lung Shiqi some hope. Disciple greets Lord Hua Luiwei. No matter what Lung Shiqi thought, Hua Luiwei was one of the 9 Underworld Blood Cloak assassins. Her status was much higher than his, so he had to salute her. Hua Luiwei turned her head and said, "You should know why I came to the imperial capital. However, I promised the assistant pavilion head that I would only fight for you once." Lung Shiqi thought that it was rumored that Hua Luiwei was similar to the pavilion head Hateful Blade. She was a closed-door cultivator. This time, he did not know what method the Ink Frost Ghost Man used to get Hua Luiwei to come to the imperial capital. Lung Shiqi was satisfied to be able to fight for him once. Without waiting for him to speak, Hua Luiwei took out a light green petal and said, "I will be staying in Menglin for a while. If there is anything, you can contact me through this. In order to not be suspected, you should wait until tomorrow morning before you leave." After she finished speaking, she went to the side and closed her eyes to cultivate. Lung Shiqi touched his nose and sat cross-legged, gradually entering into a state of cultivation. The night passed silently. When Lung Shiqi woke up the next morning, Hua Luiwei was still cultivating and had no intention of seeing him off. Lung Shiqi did not want to be snubbed, so he left. Wu Diao and the others went back last night. The news about him and the flower beauty must have spread soon. Lung Shiqi sighed secretly. Anyway, there were many strange rumors about him now. One more would not be too much. He was too lazy to care. However, before Lung Shiqi left, a purple light flashed in front of his eyes. Immediately, his surroundings changed, and he came to a purple fog. Lung Shiqi did not panic because he was familiar with the aura of the purple fog. Sure enough, an enchanting figure walked out. It was 9 Leaf. "I sensed your aura last night. I didn't expect you to be gay at such a young age. You really don't learn well." 9 Leaf teased as soon as he appeared. Naturally, Lung Shiqi could not reveal Hua Yue's identity. He could only interrupt. "Senior 9 Leaf's presence in Curtain Link is also a surprise to me. Senior must have gained a lot during this period." 9 Leaf licked her lips and said proudly, "What you said is not very nice, but you are right. My cultivation has recovered to the peak of the 5th rank. After I finish refining the monster pill I got last night, I can advance." Oh! Lung Shiqi was really surprised when he heard this. 9 Leaf had barely been in the Imperial City for a year. In such a short time, she had already absorbed the power of the 5th rank to the 6th rank. Lung Shiqi could not help but think to himself, "I wonder how many people she has harmed." However, Lung Shiqi's heart moved. This might be good news for him. He immediately cupped his fist and said, "Then I have to congratulate you first. How long will it take for you to advance this time? It might be inappropriate to continue to stay in the Imperial City. 9 Leave nodded seriously. This is also why I came to find you. At most half a month, at least 7 or 8 days, I will enter a state of deep sleep. At that time, I will need you to help me preserve my physical body. It will take a long time to advance from the 5th rank to the 6th rank. I estimate that it will take at least 2 years. That is natural. Lung Shichi smiled, but then he changed the topic. But I feel that Senior 9 Leave does not need to go through so much trouble. 9 Leave's eyelids lifted. What do you mean? Lung Shichi smiled. With a flip of his hand, he took out a perfectly round pill. This pill looked simple and unadorned, but when 9 Leaves saw the pill, his eyes suddenly burst out with 2 purple lights. What pill is this? Why do I feel that this item will be of great help to my advancement? 9 Leave asked in surprise. The pill in Lung Shichi's hand was actually the intermediate advancement pill he bought from the system store. This was specially made for demonic beasts to advance. It could greatly reduce the time it took to advance. For demonic beasts, advancing was good, but they would fall into a deep sleep during this time, which was also the most dangerous time. Even 9 Leave, a former 7th rank, great demonic beast, did not dare to be careless when she recovered. That was why she came to Lung Shichi for help. If she had this kind of pill, as long as she had enough, she could even complete her advancement in a day. The allure of the advancement pill was simply too great for her. Lung Shichi said, "This item is called the advancement pill. It is specially prepared for demonic beasts to advance. I think it should be useful to Senior 9 Leave." 9 Leave's eyes turned and the corners of her mouth rose. How can I not know what you are thinking? Tell me, what do you need me to do? Chapter 654. When Lung Shichi returned to Xingji Pavilion, a man had been waiting for him for a long time. This man was Eunuch Gao. Knowing that Eunuch Gao was here, Lung Shichi knew that what should come would come sooner or later. Gao Yi died in Dark Thunder Mansion in Western Wilderness City. Eunuch Gao did not blame Yu Ruifeng, which meant that he began to suspect Lung Shichi. However, since Lung Shichi had done it, he was prepared. He walked into the hall calmly and saw Eunuch Gao. At this moment, Eunuch Gao's eyes were closed, and there was no expression on his face. Even his aura was faintly discernible. If it weren't for the fact that he was sitting right in front of Lung Shichi wouldn't even know that Eunuch Gao was here. He could not help thinking, Eunuch Gao's cultivation seems to have improved again. Master, I pay my respects to you. Lung Shichi still saluted respectfully on the surface. Eunuch Gao still had his eyes closed. After a short while, he said, "You killed Gao Yi, right?" Lung Shichi immediately showed a look of surprise and said, "Master, I am also very sad that Eunuch Gao Yi died an unnatural death. But his death has nothing to do with me. Why do you say that?" At this time, Eunuch Gao narrowed his eyes and looked at Lung Shichi with 2 turbid eyes. There was no emotion in his eyes, but Lung Shichi felt a sense of fear. However, Lung Shichi still looked straight at Eunuch Gao without any fear. "I want an explanation," Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice. Lung Shichi thought quickly and raised his head. "First of all, when Eunuch Gao Yi died, I was not in Western Wilderness Prefecture, but in the 6 countries of the Western region. In terms of time, it is impossible to kill Gao Yi. Besides, Eunuch Gao Yi was a master at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Although I think my strength is good and I may have a chance to fight him head-on, it is absolutely impossible for me to kill Gao Yi in an instant." He stopped here. He did not say too much or too little. He thought that the more he said, the more mistakes he would make. That was enough for him. Eunuch Gao closed his eyes again. Lung Shichi could not see any of his emotions, nor could he figure out what he was thinking. However, Lung Shichi wasn't too worried because what he said just now was the truth. Judging from the time, he was not in Western Desolated City at that time. Of course, it could also be said that he had deliberately hidden himself but no one had any evidence to prove this point. Moreover, the spiritual technique he used to kill Gao Yi was the Vajra finger. This was something that Lung Shiqi had never used in front of outsiders. It could be said that no one in this world other than Tu Dang would recognize it. The result now was that there was no proof. No matter how suspicious eunuch Gao was, it was only a suspicion. Lung Shiqi was confident that eunuch Gao would not make things difficult for him based on this suspicion alone. After Gao Yi died, Lung Shiqi was the most outstanding of the young disciples under eunuch Gao. If eunuch Gao made things difficult for Lung Shiqi, it would be the same as cutting off one of his arms. Lung Shiqi believed that eunuch Gao would make the wisest choice. Sure enough, not long after, eunuch Gao said, "I don't want to look into this matter. Since Gao Yi is dead, then let him be. I will leave the missing power in my hands to you." His intention was none other than to make Lung Shiqi work even harder. Lung Shiqi also secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. This hurdle could be considered to have passed for now. He said, "Sharing master's burdens is a disciple's responsibility. In that case, there is still a task for me tomorrow." Eunuch Gao took the opportunity to say. Lung Shiqi thought that this task came too quickly. "Master, please instruct me. Do you know how many top sects there are in the Thunderfire dynasty?" Eunuch Gao suddenly asked a strange question. Lung Shiqi gave it some thought. More than half of the 36 provinces of the Thunderflame dynasty had top sects, and, as far as he knew, there were as many as 19 of them. Eunuch Gao nodded. "That's right. Do you know which ones are the strongest?" Of course, there were differences in strength between the top sections. For example, the Bloodcloak Pavilion was stronger than the Mountain Sea sect. Both of them were stronger than the 1,000 Illusionary Sword sect. However, it was hard to say which ones were the strongest. If one looked at the ranking of sects, the strongest was undoubtedly the Six Directions spiritual region of the Four Saint spiritual regions. However, the Six Directions spiritual region was in a semi-secluded state and rarely had disciples appear. Next would be the 5 extreme sects and the 6 Daos Devil Realms. Of the 5 extreme sects, the 10,000 Laws Mysterious sect and the Liuhua Palace were both in the Thunderflame dynasty. The 6 Daos Devil Realms only had the Inferno Devil sect. However, why did eunuch Gao ask this? Just as Lung Shiqi spoke his thoughts, eunuch Gao asked again, "Then which of these top sects do you think poses the greatest threat to the Thunderfire dynasty?" Eunuch Gao's continuous questions made Lung Shiqi even more confused. However, he knew that eunuch Gao wouldn't ask questions for no reason. It must have something to do with the next task. From the surface, the 10,000 Laws sect and the Liuhua Palace posed the greatest threat. Lung Shiqi answered, "You're only half right. Actually, the Thunderfire dynasty's greatest threat is the 10,000 Laws sect. The 10,000 Laws sect's people will enter the imperial capital the day after tomorrow. When the time comes, you'll welcome them on behalf of me." Eunuch Gao finally said, 10,000 Laws sect. Lung Shiqi thought about this name and quickly found information about it in his mind. The 10,000 Laws sect was one of the 5 extreme sects in the world sect ranking. This sect was very extreme. All the disciples inside were spirit casters. In other words, only spirit casters had the qualifications to join the 10,000 Laws sect. The 10,000 Laws sect had a long history and had a foundation of at least 10,000 years. However, the number of disciples in the sect wasn't many. Every generation would maintain around 500 to 600. After all, spirit casters were very rare. Furthermore, the 10,000 Laws sect didn't accept all spirit casters. They still had to go through layers of screening. It was better to have nothing than to have something substandard. Although the 10,000 Laws sect didn't have many disciples, every disciple that left the mountain was an existence that could hold their own. If it was a top sect, this wasn't what the Thunderfire dynasty was most afraid of. In any case, the Thunderfire dynasty had more than 10 top sects in their territory, and they weren't afraid of anyone. The only thing that the Thunderfire dynasty was very afraid of was the 10,000 Laws sect. This was because the deterrence of spirit casters in war was simply too strong. If the 10,000 Laws sect participated in a certain chaos, those few hundred spirit casters would be enough to destroy an entire army. It was rumored that the inheritors of the 10,000 Laws sect had a large number of terrifying spirit skill, especially some combined formations that had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Therefore, the Thunderfire dynasty had always kept a close eye on the 10,000 Laws sect. This time, the 10,000 Laws sect had also sent people to participate in Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. However, for some reason, they were the last to arrive, even later than the other diplomatic groups. However, the 10,000 Laws sect's weight was stronger than the 6 kingdoms of the western region. Yunagao and several other important figures had to go together to welcome them. This wasn't a difficult matter. Lung Shiqi cupped his hands and said, "This disciple understands." Chapter 655. 2 days later, Lung Shiqi arrived at the gate of the imperial capital with his guards. This time, the number of people who came to greet the mysterious sect was also huge. Sun Tiangan, the commander of the patrol guards, came in person. He was an expert of the sky origin realm. Even an expert of such status came to greet them in person. Lung Shiqi guessed that the mysterious sect of 10,000 methods had sent an expert of the sky origin realm. In addition to Sun Tiangan, there was another person who had some relationship with Lung Shiqi. That was Lei Mayan, one of the 4 punishment envoys of the Discipline Commission. She was also the backer of the Delta Orgi in the Discipline Commission. If Yunagao was also present, his appearance would be really luxurious. From this, it could be seen that the Thunderfire dynasty attached great importance to the mysterious sect of 10,000 methods. Not long after, a group of about 10 people appeared in everyone's sight. The leader was a gray-haired old man. His complexion was dark, and his expression was serious. What was different was that there were 3 mysterious magic beads floating behind him, giving people an unfathomable feeling. Feichin timely whispered in Lung Shiqi's ear, "Sir, this is the elder of the Law Enforcement Hall of the mysterious sect of 10,000 methods, Elder Bu. He is an expert of the sky origin realm." Lung Shiqi nodded silently. As expected, there was an expert of the sky origin realm here. He continued to look behind. Behind Elder Bu, there were 2 men and a woman. The 3 of them were young, but each of them had the cultivation of the gang spirit realm. They must be the most outstanding disciples of the mysterious sect of 10,000 methods. However, Lung Shiqi's attention was immediately attracted by the girl. This girl could not be considered a beauty, but she was very sweet. Especially when she smiled, it was even more amiable and lovely. She was very lovable. Of course, Lung Shiqi was not attracted by this. More importantly, he felt a trace of a familiar aura from this girl. However, he could not recall what aura it was. This made him frown unconsciously. He turned around and asked Feichin behind him, "Do you recognize the girl walking in the second row?" Feichin revealed a smile of understanding and secretly gave Lung Shiqi a thumbs up. His lord was no longer satisfied with the beauties of the imperial capital and had even taken a fancy to the disciples of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect. He said softly, "My lord, that young girl is called Meng Tiantian. She is an outstanding talent among the younger generation of disciples of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect." It was said that she had only joined the mysterious 10,000 Arts sect about 3 years ago. Since then, her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Her comprehension of spirit arts and illusion arts was also extremely high. She could easily learn many obscure secret arts passed down from ancient times. She shone brilliantly in the 10,000 Laws Mystic sect competition 2 months ago, consecutively defeating many disciples who had cultivated for a longer time than her, becoming the head seat of the current generation of disciples in one fell swoop. Moreover, she was also accepted as a direct disciple by the Myriad Laws sect master, Myriad Laws Spirit Senior, who had not come out of seclusion for a long time. She was also given a separate cultivation paradise. It could be said that she was in the limelight. This time, she must have come to the imperial capital because the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect wanted her to come out and gain experience. Meng Tiantian, Meng Tiantian. Lung Shiqi repeatedly muttered the young girl's name. He was certain that he had never seen Meng Tiantian before. Even the supercilious eyes did not record her spiritual aura. There was no mistake about this. However, Meng Tiantian gave him a very strange feeling. It was as if there was some kind of unfathomable relationship between them. Just as Lung Shiqi was thinking, the people of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect had already arrived in front of him. Patrol Commander Sun Tiangan and Punishment Envoy Lei Mayan both came forward to welcome them. Lung Shiqi followed behind them. Although he came as a representative of Unigao, his status was still that of an inner supervisor, so he could only follow behind. Sun Tiangan smiled at Elder Bu of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect and said, "Elder Bu, it must have been hard for you to come from afar." Elder Bu also put on a fake smile and said, "It is an honor to be able to attend His Majesty's birthday banquet." These two Sky Origin Stage experts didn't seem to be very good with words. However, at their level, there was no need to waste words. The two of them only said these two sentences and walked into the inner city of the imperial capital. The process was simple and smooth. Lung Shiqi was happy to see this. Now that this task was over, he could go back. However, when Meng Tiantian walked past Lung Shiqi, she suddenly turned her head and glanced at Lung Shiqi. To others, she was just looking around curiously, but Lung Shiqi's body suddenly stopped. Immediately, his face turned pale. Layers of cold sweat covered his entire body with a schwa sound. Immediately after, a stream of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He Feichen was the closest to Lung Shiqi. He immediately noticed his abnormality and hurriedly shouted, "My lord, what happened to you?" Lung Shiqi's body trembled again. He suddenly began to pant violently, as if someone was strangling him to death. His eyes suddenly shrank. In that moment, he was attacked by dozens of illusions at the same time. Moreover, so many illusions actually combined to form a huge illusion array. In an instant, he was trapped in the illusion array. Although it seemed like only 1 or 2 breaths of time had passed, to Lung Shiqi, he had experienced a fierce battle that wasn't inferior to fighting against someone in the unity of heaven and man stage. If he hadn't already condensed a primordial spirit, he would have been trapped in the illusion array forever and become an idiot for life. Now that Lung Shiqi was awake, he was still scared. He was the clearest about his mental strength. He was certain that his mental strength was not weaker than a spirit caster in the unity of heaven and man stage. Even so, he was still pulled into dozens of illusions. Could it be that Elder Bu, a Sky Yuan stage spirit caster, was the only one who could do this? But why would Elder Bu, a Sky Yuan stage spirit caster, attack him? He didn't have any enmity with the mysterious 10,000 Arts sect. Today was the first time they had met. Why would they do this? At this time, Elder Bu really did stop. He first looked at Lung Shiqi, then at Meng Tiantian. Elder Bu's face immediately tensed up and said, "Nonsense. If this young man's mental strength wasn't so strong, something would have happened. When we return, I will definitely punish you." His words sounded very stiff, but there was no hint of blame in them. He was just saying it. Meng Tiantian stuck out her tongue and giggled. "I saw that his mental strength wasn't bad, so I tested him. Don't mind it." Everyone else didn't understand what was going on, but Lung Shiqi suddenly looked at Meng Tiantian in shock. The one who attacked was Meng Tiantian. How was this possible? Lung Shiqi found it hard to believe. Meng Tiantian's cultivation was the same as his. Even if Meng Tiantian was a genius at cultivating spirit spells, she shouldn't have the mental strength of a Sky Yuan stage spirit caster. Moreover, why would Meng Tiantian do this? Was it really just for fun? Lung Shiqi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "It's fine." After saying that, he left with Yifei, Chun, and the others. No one noticed that he left early. After all, he was the victim. Lung Shiqi was in a hurry to go back because he wanted to cultivate immediately. Meng Tiantian's actions didn't have a motive. Her appearance made Lung Shiqi even more convinced that there was always someone better than him. If it was a life and death battle, he would have died long ago. Lung Shiqi was confident that he had the strength to fight against someone in the unity of heaven and man stage. However, today he met Meng Tiantian, who could kill him instantly. This gave him a lot of pressure. However, he didn't notice that the illusion character in his spirit sea was blooming with 5 colors. Chapter 656. After returning to the Xingji Pavilion, Lung Shiqi went straight into the secret cultivation room and announced that he was going into seclusion. He did not even care about the position of deputy manager that eunuch Gao had promised him. There were still 7 days until Lei Chengjuan's birthday banquet. After the people from the 10,000 Laws sect arrived, all the factions and diplomatic groups that were participating in the banquet had already arrived. Unknowingly, a piece of news had spread in the imperial capital. It was that His Majesty was preparing to appoint a crown prince at the banquet. Whichever prince passed the Void Scar Sky's trial would obtain the crown prince's position. There was also news that when the Void Scar Sky opened, the various sects that came to celebrate could also enter. As for the number of people, it would be the same as the number of people attending the banquet. First-rate sects would only have 1 spot, while the top sects would have 3. No one knew who spread this news, but it seemed that in a single night, everyone with some status had received this news. They all tacitly kept their mouths shut, and from this moment on, the imperial capital began to surge with undercurrents, especially the few princes that had the most hope of obtaining the throne. They all began to vigorously contact and rope in people from the various sections. One must know that the Void Scar Sky only allowed spirit cultivators of the spirit astral realm to enter. And those who could attend Lei Chengjuan's birthday banquet were either the upper echelons of the sect or the most outstanding disciples. No matter which one it was, their strength would definitely be at the top of their peers. As long as they could rope in these people, they would be able to increase their strength at the fastest speed. For example, the first Prince Lei Haoyan, the 4th Prince Lei Haoran, and the 13th Prince Lei Haoyun were initially disdainful of Lei Haoqing. But when Lei Haoqing received the support of experts from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he could vaguely compete with the 3 of them. It could be seen that cooperating with spirit cultivators was a shortcut to increasing one's strength. Furthermore, the strongest sects in the world were all gathered in the imperial capital. The pavilion closest to the water enjoyed the moonlight first. Whoever snatched it first would get it. And from that day onwards, the princes had several conflicts in order to obtain the support of their respective sections. Each conflict was more intense than the last, to the point that they had even injured each other. In addition, there was some enmity between the spirit cultivator sections. It was even more so for the sects that were located in the same province. Therefore, in just a day or two, there were already several intense battles between spirit cultivator sects in the inner city. The patrol guards wanted to interfere, but those sects were backed by princes and princes with high status and power. The patrol guards couldn't do anything about it. However, they could not allow these people to cause trouble. After all, there were still the divisions of the Starfall dynasty, Northern Wei dynasty, and the 6 nations of the Western region present. If they did that, wouldn't they become a laughing stock? The patrol guards had no choice but to report this matter to their superiors. However, when the matter reached their superiors, there was no news. The patrolling guards were stunned. From the looks of it, the higher-ups were going to let the princes and the spirit cultivator sects go. Left with no choice, the patrol guards could only go through the motions whenever something happened. In addition to patrolling, this kind of thing also had a part of the responsibility of the Dark Thunder Guards. The patrolling guards didn't care on the surface, but the Dark Thunder Guards still had to investigate in the dark. If it was just a fight between the princes, they wouldn't care. However, if someone used this opportunity to stir up trouble, then don't blame the Dark Thunder Guard for being impolite. And Lung Shiqi didn't participate in these matters. He was still in closed-door cultivation. It was a pity that he guessed that he had only been in closed-door cultivation for 6 days when someone knocked on the door of the secret room. Fei-Chun stood outside the secret room with a strange expression on his face. He was holding a square box in his hand. It was unknown what was inside, but it made him feel like he was holding a hot potato. Lung Shiqi pushed open the door of the secret room and asked, "What's wrong?" There were still 2 days before the birthday banquet. Fei-Chun must have something important to call him in advance. Fei-Chun held up the square box in his hand and said with a strange expression, "Sir, this item was brought over by Steward Gao." "What is this?" Lung Shiqi saw that Fei-Chun's expression was a little strange and asked, "This? Sir, you should take a look at it yourself." Fei-Chun opened his mouth, but changed it at the last moment. Lung Shiqi picked up the box and opened the lid to take a look. Inside was an official seal the size of half a palm. He picked up the seal. This thing was silver gray in color, and at the very bottom, there were the words Deputy General Manager's seal. This thing was the official seal that symbolized the authority of the Dark Thunder Guard's deputy steward. Lung Shiqi's eyes suddenly moved. This was the item that he had obtained after sneaking into the 6 Western countries alone and being intercepted by Li Juning. However, Lung Shiqi's heart didn't fluctuate too much because he also understood Eunuch Gao's meaning. A few days ago, he explained the matter of Gao Yi to Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao could only say that he didn't have any evidence of Lung Shiqi and didn't mention it for the time being. But this didn't mean that Eunuch Gao would continue to let Lung Shiqi go. Although Eunuch Gao kept his promise and gave Lung Shiqi the identity of deputy steward, Lung Shiqi only got this official seal. According to common sense, the position of deputy steward was not a small matter in the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. No matter what, there should be a ceremony or something. At the same time, as the deputy steward, he also had a lot of power. For example, he could connect all the affairs and intelligence of a certain state. If there was no Gao Yi, Lung Shiqi should have taken over all the affairs reported by Ningyan County. In addition, the deputy steward had at least several imperial sensors under him that could be mobilized. Then the War Thunder Guards would have more guards. It could be said that the power controlled by Lung Shiqi would soar several times in an instant. But now, he had nothing. He only had the identity of deputy steward, and the power in his hands didn't change at all. Lung Shiqi didn't feel much of a ripple in his heart. Before this, he had already expected Eunuch Gao to make things difficult for him. It could also be considered a warning to him. But he didn't expect Eunuch Gao to be so ruthless this time and directly make him a commander without an army. This also proved that Eunuch Gao was indeed very suspicious of Lung Shiqi. He also secretly said that it was fortunate that he didn't tell Eunuch Gao that he was intercepted by Li Juning. Otherwise, if Eunuch Gao knew that he could even kill Li Juning, then naturally he could also kill Gao Yi. Since things had reached this point, Lung Shiqi was just going with the flow. Anyway, as long as he had the identity of deputy steward, it was equivalent to having the qualifications to become one of the 4 stewards. Compared to the power of deputy steward, this was what Lung Shiqi valued the most. Lung Shiqi waved his hand to let Fei-Chun leave. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and all kinds of things flashed through his mind. Blood Clothing Pavilion, Zhu Luhua, and Dark Thunder Guards. For a moment, he put away the official seal of deputy steward, and a light called ambition flashed in his eyes. It's time to start planning for myself. Chapter 657. 2 days later, the birthday banquet that would affect the entire Thunderfire dynasty and even the entire Starfall continent finally began. The various nobles of the Thunderfire dynasty, the 8 envoys from the Starfall dynasty, Northern Wei dynasty, and the experts from the various sects entered the palace one after another. Lung Shiqi followed behind Eunuch Gao. As one of the 4 great generals, Eunuch Gao could only bring one person in. Shizhen also brought Wu Diao, Di Chuan, Zhuge Puha, and Delta Orgi as well. This was the first time Lung Shiqi had officially entered the Thunderfire Dynasty's palace. As far as the eye could see, this place was not very luxurious, but rather grand and majestic. Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet started at noon, and the location was in the palace's courtyard. When Lung Shiqi and the others arrived, the princes had already arrived. Among the many princes present, only the first prince, Lei Haoyan, was dressed in martial attire, looking mighty and domineering. The fourth prince, Lei Haoran, held a folding fan in his hand, looking a little feminine. The 13th prince, Lei Haoyun, had a smile on his face, looking very warm. As for Lei Haoqing, who had been assassinated by Lung Shiqi before, his face was gloomy, and he was probably not in a good mood. In the center of them was a huge dragon throne, which was the throne that every prince yearned for. Along the way, Eunuch Gao and the others did not say a word, appearing very quiet. Lung Shiqi also felt that this birthday banquet was definitely not so simple, and that something was going to happen. In the past 2 days, he had also heard about the matter of the Crown Prince and the opening of Void Scar Sky. When he first received the news, he thought that it might have been deliberately released by Lei Changjun. This kind of extremely secretive news, to be able to know about it in advance, one had to be at least at the level of the 4 great generals. However, these people were all shrewd people, and it was impossible for them to casually mention this matter to outsiders, and even more impossible for the news to spread in such a short period of time. Furthermore, the princes had been causing more and more trouble in the past few days, so how could Lei Qingjun not know? He was just letting them go, but Lung Shiqi could not guess what his goal was, but it should be revealed today. Then he looked at the group of people from the Spirit Cultivator sect. Only a little more than 100 sects had come to participate in the birthday banquet. Among them, only 1 person from the first-rate sect could enter, and 3 people from the top sects could enter. There were more than 200 people in total, but the weakest among them was at Gang Spirit Realm. Among them, there were no less than 30 to 40 people who had achieved one with the heavens, and a few of them were Sky Origin Stage cultivators. These people sat together. Although they couldn't release their cultivation, the aura of spiritual power they unintentionally released made it difficult for ordinary people to approach them. Therefore, the eunuchs and palace made to receive them were all carefully selected. Even the weakest of them had to be at the spirit transformation realm to be able to move around in this group of people. Among these people, Lung Shiqi cared about 2 people the most. One of them was naturally Meng Tiantian from the 10,000 Laws Wondrous sect. A few days ago, Meng Tiantian had caused him to fall into dozens of illusions with a single glance, causing him to be injured. Lung Shiqi was not only afraid of Meng Tiantian, but also very curious about her. He had specially asked people to collect detailed information about Meng Tiantian before, only to find that Meng Tiantian had broken through all the way from the spirit transformation realm to the Gang Spirit realm in just 3 or 4 years. This cultivation speed was much faster than that of Delta Orgi. Lung Shiqi's cultivation speed was similar to Meng Tiantian's, but his cultivation speed was so fast that he didn't know how many cheats he had used to get it, and he had exchanged his life for it again and again. What about Meng Tiantian? According to the information, since she joined the 10,000 Laws Wondrous sect, she had almost never left the sect and only went out to gain experience once or twice. Since she could have such a terrifying cultivation speed, her cultivation talent must belong to the god level. Coupled with the tens of thousands of years of foundation of the 10,000 Laws Wondrous sect, it was not impossible. If it was just cultivation, Lung Shiqi was not particularly surprised. What surprised him most was Meng Tiantian's strength, especially her control of illusion. She could be said to be invincible in the same realm. No, this was no longer invincible in the same realm. Lung Shiqi estimated that Meng Tiantian definitely had the strength to kill a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man stage. Therefore, he was very concerned about Meng Tiantian. As for the other person, Lung Shiqi was a little surprised. He had met that person once before. That was one of the 9 Netherworld Blood Cloak assassins he had met in the Bloodkill Hall after coming out of the Blood Mist Island. Lung Yu. At that time, Lung Yu was prepared to accept Lung Shiqi as a disciple, but in the end, he was snatched away by Wu Xiang. Lung Shiqi did not expect Lung Yu to be here. Although the Blood Clothing Pavilion was located in the Thunderflame Dynasty, in his impression, the Blood Clothing Pavilion would not participate in this kind of activity. This time, they actually sent someone. Perhaps this was the change that the Blood Clothing Pavilion wanted to make. As one of the 9 Netherworld Blood Cloak assassins of the Blood Clothing Pavilion, Lung Yu's popularity was not very good. At this moment, he was sitting alone in the corner. In fact, with his strength and status, even if he sat in the most central seats, there would be no objections. But who asked him to be a member of the Blood Clothing Pavilion? Many of the spirit cultivator sects had died in the hands of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. Although they all tacitly agreed that they needed this hidden sword, it did not mean that they did not resent the Blood Clothing Pavilion. Now that they saw Lung Yu face to face, it was already very good that they could sit here peacefully. The people present came from all over the place. Other than the officials and ministers who were already acquainted with each other and were more talkative, the others were more silent and seemed to have a lot on their minds. After half an hour, the palace gates closed and a royal palanquin slowly came over. It was the royal palanquin of the Thunderflame Dynasty's emperor, Lei Chongjun. Everyone stood up to welcome him. "Welcome, your majesty. Long live, long live, long live." Some of these people knelt down, while some only bowed. After all, not everyone was a servant of the Thunderflame Dynasty. Lei Qingjun walked out with the support of the head steward. Eunuch do this was the first time Lung Shiqi saw Lei Qingjun. His face looked very old, and there was a sickly look that could not be concealed. Only his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, causing people to not dare to look directly at him. He was actually not very old. If he was in an ordinary family, he would be quite old. But this was a world of spirit cultivators, and he was the emperor of one of the 3 great dynasties. What kind of treasures could he not obtain? So even if he did not have any talent for cultivation, it was not a problem for him to live for more than 100 years. In fact, what caused him to be powerless was that his mind was too exhausted. In the eyes of others, Lei Qingjun was a conservative ruler who did not establish a country in his life. But in his heart, he did not want to be a mediocre ruler who would not be remembered by future generations. That was why he worked so hard. Lei Chongjun sat on the dragon throne and said a simple sentence. "Today is my birthday banquet, but I only want to say one thing, and that is to establish a crown prince." Chapter 658. Most of the people present had known about this long ago, but they still revealed a surprised expression. After all, this was Lei Chengjuan's birthday banquet. Not mentioning the birthday banquet, but going straight to the main topic, wasn't a little too fast? The princes all clenched their fists. Their fates would change greatly today. Some might even be able to ascend to the throne and become the person in charge of the 3 dynasties. Of course, they might also become the first target of the new emperor's purge. They would not be able to escape death. This birthday banquet not only determined their fates, but also their lives. Lei Qingjun did not care about the reactions of the crowd. He continued, "Today, I will open the Void Scar Sky. The Thunderfire Pearl, the heirloom of the Thunderfire Dynasty, is inside. Whoever finds it will be qualified to inherit the throne. In addition, the Dark Thunder Guards, Discipline Commission patrol guards, dukes, marquises, the military, and spirit cultivator sects can all enter. However, there's a limit to the number of people who can enter, and the highest cultivation can only be at the spirit astral realm. The Void Scar Sky has not been open for more than 100 years. What opportunities you can find inside is up to you." Everyone's face lit up with joy. They said in unison, "Thank you, your majesty." After Lei Chongjun said these few words, he appeared to be much more tired. He half reclined on the dragon throne and just looked at everyone. Among everyone, only the envoys of the Starfall dynasty had nothing to do with the matter of the crown prince. They just wanted to watch the show. Suddenly, a person appeared beside Lei Qingjun. That person was dressed in a yellow robe and had a solemn face. From his appearance, he looked very similar to Lei Qingjun. As soon as this person appeared, many people exclaimed. It seemed that some people knew his identity, but most people did not know him. Lung Shiqi was one of them. He transmitted his voice to eunuch Gao. Master, who is this? I see that His Majesty is quite respectful to him. Eunuch Gao was also surprised. He said, this person is His Majesty's twin brother, the shoddy prince. When His Majesty ascended the throne, King Zhuozhen was the one who contributed the most. In fact, many people thought that King Zhuozhen would be the next emperor. However, he eventually gave the throne to His Majesty and entered the Imperial Worship Hall. The Imperial Hall of Worship is managed by the humble prince. He is a Sky Origin Stage cultivator, but he hasn't shown up for decades. I didn't expect that His Majesty would ask him to come out. Lung Shiqi nodded in understanding. Even the person in charge of the Imperial Hall of Worship had come out. This birthday banquet was indeed going to be a big event. He did not believe that Lei Qingjun was only here to select the crown prince. There must be some other purpose. Eunuch Gao continued. The Dark Thunder Guards only have one slot to enter Void Scar Sky. I'll count you in. Thank you, Master. Lung Shiqi thanked Eunuch Gao. At the same time, he understood Eunuch Gao's intentions. A few days ago, Eunuch Gao had made him a deputy general manager with no real authority. Now, Eunuch Gao had allowed him to enter Void Scar Sky. It was nothing more than a slap in the face and a sweet date. King Zhuozhen opened his mouth. His voice sounded very deep. Those who enter Void Scar Sky, please come forward. Eunuch Du said, each prince can bring a maximum of 10 people. The same goes for the Dark Thunder Guards, Discipline Division, and Patrol Guards. The Duke's Mansion and the General's Mansion will each send one person. The first-rate sex will send one person, and the top sex will send 3 people. Instantly, there was some noise from the crowd. Based on this, there were only about 200 people who could enter Void Scar Sky. This was because many of the Spirit Cultivator sects had already submitted to the princes. If they entered as the prince's retainers, then they did not have the qualifications to enter. Lung Shiqi also walked forward. Delta Orgi stood not far from him. The two of them looked at each other. In that instant, they reached a tacit agreement. However, to Lung Shiqi's surprise, Lung Yu of the Blood Clothing Pavilion also stood up. He was a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm. He could not enter Void Scar Sky. Lung Yu's action also attracted many people's attention. However, to everyone's surprise, 2 clouds of black fog suddenly rose from both sides of Lung Yu. Then, 2 figures walked out of it. Both of them were wearing the golden-striped blood clothing of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. Obviously, they were golden-striped blood clothing assassins of the Spirit Gang realm. Both of them were wearing masks. One of them had a sparkling jade tree engraved on his mask, while the other's was a shadow. For the people present, golden-striped blood clothing assassins were not rare. What shocked them was, how did these 2 people appear? Don't make a fuss. Elder Bu of the Wonderful Sect said, these 2 people have been here since the beginning. It's just that some mediocre people did not notice them. The Blood Clothing Pavilion's concealment technique is indeed extraordinary. As soon as he said that, many people's faces turned red. However, Elder Bu was a master of the Sky Origin realm, and the Wonderful Sect was one of the most powerful sects in the Thunder Flame dynasty. No one dared to confront him, so they could only swallow their anger. Lung Shiqi was also shocked when he saw the 2 people who suddenly appeared. Others might not know them, but he definitely knew the Delta Orgi. They were Yushu and Meng Ming. Lung Shiqi did not expect that they had already reached the Spirit Gang realm. He clearly remembered that the last time he saw Meng Ming, he had just broken through the Spirit Aperture realm. They must have had some adventures recently. The reason why Lung Shiqi did not notice them at first was that there were too many people here. He did not activate the supercilious eyes, so he did not notice that they were hiding. This was really a great deterrent. but it would make the blood-clothing pavilion more important in the hearts of many sects. Unexpectedly, the four people who left the Blood Fog Island together would reunite at Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. According to the hidden rules of the sects, the blood-clothing pavilion was not allowed to participate in this kind of secret realm competition. At first, some people expressed their dissatisfaction, but the emperor of the Thunder Flame dynasty, Lei Qingjun, did not care. The humble king did not refuse, so others could not say anything. After all, the Space Scar Sky was the secret realm of the Thunder Flame dynasty. He could let whoever he wanted in, and no one else could stop him. In Lung Shiqi's view, the blood-clothing pavilion was just testing the waters this time. As long as there was a precedent, it would not be so difficult to accept in the future. The humble king did not care about this small disturbance. He made a seal with his hands, and spots of golden light appeared in front of him, forming a huge gate. Then he waved his hand, and hundreds of spots flew out and landed on everyone who wanted to enter the Space Scar Sky. This is your life plate. If you die in the Space Scar Sky, the outside world will know, he explained. Hearing this, everyone's hearts sank. The humble king meant that they could kill people in the Space Scar Sky. But this was Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. How could they kill people at the emperor's birthday banquet? What was Lei Qingjun trying to do? This question lingered in everyone's minds. The attitude of the Starfall dynasty's envoys, who were originally watching a show, began to change. The Space Scar Sky will only be open for 3 days. Everything will be clear in 3 days. Everyone, go in. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden gate slowly opened. In an instant, golden light shone, enveloping everyone in front of the gate. In less than a breath's time, the golden light disappeared. At the same time, the 200 or so spirit cultivators disappeared as well. Chapter 659. When Lung Shiqi opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surging towards him. From what he could tell, it was at least 10 times stronger than the outside world. Even if he did nothing, cultivating here for 3 days would not be a waste. Lung Shiqi looked around, and all he could see were lush forests and rolling hills. He looked up from a high vantage point, and all he could see was the same. The strangest thing was that there was a crack in the sky that stretched all the way to the horizon. It looked like a broken mirror. He muttered to himself, "Legend has it that Air Scar Sky is about half the size of a province. With only 200 people here, it's not easy to even meet others, let alone find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl." Lung Shiqi did not forget that the princes were most interested in the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. However, Lei Qingjun had only said that the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was an Air Scar Sky. Looking for a pearl in such a large secret realm was like looking for a needle in a haystack. However, Lung Shiqi did not mind. He had only come here to reap some benefits. The heavenly Thunderfire Pearl had nothing to do with him. He then opened the system map. After the system had been upgraded, the system map's functions had become more powerful. Not only could it show all the landforms of Air Scar Sky, but it could also show places with abnormal spiritual energy. These places either had heaven and earth treasures, or they were dangerous. In order to ensure his safety, Lung Shiqi even tried to use the Fate skill and the Underworld. He found that both of them could be used in Air Scar Sky. This made him feel relieved. As long as he could use the Fate skill and enter the Underworld, he would be invincible. After being ambushed by Li Juning and Meng Tiantian's appearance, Lung Shiqi had become more cautious. However, he did not enter Air Scar Sky to fight with others. He was here to search for treasures. Lung Shiqi opened his pet space. A pink pig jumped out. It was the four-legged metal swallowing beast. After being fed by the Lung Shiqi for a long time, the four-legged metal swallowing beast was already a rank 5 monster beast. It could detect treasures within a radius of 100 miles, and the highest it could detect was rank 6 materials. Ever since he had obtained this beast, he hadn't had the chance to use it. Now it finally came in handy. Although there were many natural treasures in Void Scar Sky, it was impossible for them to be found everywhere. With this four-legged metal-swallowing beast, he could go on a rampage and make a fortune. That was good. Lung Shiqi picked up the four-legged metal-swallowing beast and said, "Let's see if there are any treasures nearby." The little beast twitched its nose as if it was smelling something. Then it actually spoke in human language. "Master, there's something good 50 miles north." Lung Shiqi smiled with satisfaction. He found the right direction according to the system map, and with a light step, he was 2 miles away. During the time when he returned to the imperial capital and was in seclusion in Xingji Pavilion, he didn't deliberately deduce any spiritual skills. He spent all his time comprehending the state when he killed Li Juning. Now, although he was far from that level, he found that he had an inexplicable sense of intimacy with the earth. He seemed to be able to control the power of the earth invisibly. For example, he didn't use any spiritual skills just now, but the effect he achieved was comparable to a rank 6 body movement spiritual skill. With such speed, Lung Shiqi arrived 50 miles away in a moment. There was a deep cave here. Lung Shiqi opened his eyes and immediately saw a huge breath in it. And judging from the size of the breath's owner, it seemed to be a snake-shaped monster. And it was a rank 5 monster comparable to a master of Gang's spirit realm. There are still monsters in Voidscar Sky. It must have been deliberately thrown in by the Thunderflame dynasty to raise them. Lung Shiqi thought to himself. Then he strode into the cave. Sure enough, it didn't take long before the snake-shaped monster rushed straight at him. In terms of speed, it was far beyond the ordinary Gang's spirit realm. However, this kind of speed was not enough in front of Lung Shiqi. With a thought, a faint yellow light flashed, and the demonic beast was hit by an invisible force and was instantly pressed to the ground. Lung Shiqi saw clearly that it was a green giant python. At this moment, the giant python was pressed down by gravity. Even if it struggled hard, it could only twist its body slightly. Since there's a rank 5 monster guarding here, the treasures in this cave should be of high quality, including you. You're also a good material, Lung Shiqi said lightly. Then a light bloomed behind his head. A mini-light golden sword shadow appeared and shot into the giant python's head in a flash. Then, the look in the giant python's eyes quickly disappeared, and even its vitality disappeared. After Lung Shiqi suffered from the backfire of using the law of heaven and earth and was sneak attacked by Meng Tian, his spiritual strength had improved a lot. He was now able to condense the sword of primordial spirit. Generally speaking, only spiritual casters in the middle and late stages of oneness of heaven and men could have such strong spiritual strength. The giant python died just like that. Thinking back to when Lung Shiqi was in the demonic Miasma mountain range, a rank 3 demonic beast almost took his life. But now he could casually kill a rank 5 demonic beast. But he didn't feel anything in his heart, as if he had just done a very ordinary thing. He put away the giant python's body. He didn't kill it with a sword of primordial spirit to show off his skills. Besides, there was no one else here. He was actually afraid of damaging the giant python's body. The value of a complete corpse like this will be much higher. Then, Lung Shiqi walked to the deepest part of the cave. There was a short bamboo here. The bamboo was pure black, and there was a faint demonic aura around it. Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows. Could this be a rank 6 material, Weeping Soul Magic Bamboo? This is an excellent material for refining demonic weapons. Not bad, not bad. He carefully moved the Weeping Soul Magic Bamboo into the system space. Then he took out a few spiritual stones and fed them to the 4-legged metal-swallowing beast. Little thing, so you're quite capable. The little beast proudly raised its little head like a human and didn't forget to chew on the spirit stones with a crunching sound. Come, let's continue. Just like that, Lung Shiqi brought the 4-legged metal-swallowing beast to plunder all kinds of treasures in Airscar Sky. In just half a day, he had obtained many rank 6 treasures. It could be said that he made a lot of money. During this period, he hadn't met anyone else. After all, the number of people who came in to cultivate was too small. Even if he wanted to meet someone, it was not easy. After more than 2 hours, Lung Shiqi arrived at the next treasure place. But from afar, he sensed the fluctuation of spiritual power from a fight. The treasure here had been discovered and started a fight for it. Lung Shiqi opened his eyes. His expression immediately darkened. In his perception, there were 5 spirit astral realm masters besieging 2 spirit cultivators at the first level of spirit astral realm several miles away. Those 2 were Yushu and Meng Ming. Chapter 660. 7 gang spirit realm experts were fighting fiercely beside a sacred tree emitting pure blue spiritual power. 2 of them were wearing the same blood-red clothes. They were Yushu and Meng Ming, who came with Lung Yu. Out of the other 5, 3 of them were also wearing aqua blue robes, while the other 2 were dressed in luxurious attire. The 5 people were in the early, middle, and late stages of gang spirit realm. Obviously, they had the upper hand in the battle. After all, Yushu and Meng Ming were just in the early stages of gang spirit realm. Even if they were strong, it was difficult for them to face 5 gang spirit realm experts. What was more, in Lung Shiqi's view, Yushu and Meng Ming were both practicing assassination. Now they were surrounded by so many people. 6 years ago, several elders of our Yinshui sect were killed by the killers of your Blood Cloak Pavilion. You have been hiding, but now you dare to show up. Today, I will avenge your elders. The dark and thin middle-aged man said angrily. Yinshui sect was one of the top 9 sects in the world. There were 2 Sky Origin Realm experts in the sect, which was famous in the region. 6 years ago, Yinshui sect led a group of young disciples out of the mountain for experience. As a result, 1 Heaven Man Realm expert and 3 Gang Spirit Realm experts were assassinated by the killers of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Yushu's mouth was not idle even as he fought. Pooh, you're blaming me for not being as skilled as others? What's more, it was someone else who wanted to kill your elders. Why go against the Blood Cloak Pavilion? Nonsense. You killed them. It's natural for you to pay with your life. Then aren't you afraid of offending the Blood Cloak Pavilion and killing the disciples of Yinshui sect every day? Yushu broke their joint attack with 1 strike and continued. Haha, this is Airscar Sky. Who knows how you died? Ha ha ha. Yushu also laughed wildly. Well said. I'll say the same to you. In the next moment, Yushu's eyes were suddenly tainted by a thick black color, leaving only a hellish darkness in his eyes. He held the spirit saber in his hand, and the spirit light of the saber suddenly shrank. Even the aura of Yushu's entire body became still. Yushu stared straight at the dark-skinned man. He actually felt as if he was being solidified by death. For some reason, a great sense of despair suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. He clearly had the upper hand in terms of numbers and strength. If nothing unexpected happened, it wouldn't take long for him to kill these 2 Blood Clothing Pavilion assassins and avenge his master. But it was so inexplicable that his situation seemed to have been reversed. He was always on the edge of the cliff, and if he wasn't careful, he would fall into the abyss and die without a burial place. In the face of death, despair instantly spread throughout his entire body. The black skinny man's body instantly stiffened. Yushu coldly smiled. Even though he was wearing a mask, one could still see the cold smile on his face. Immediately, a saber light flashed, and the black skinny man was directly cut into 2 halves. Strangely, those who were fighting stopped at the same time. The 4 Gang Spirit Realm experts were all shocked, especially the remaining 2 Yinshui sect disciples. Their faces were full of astonishment. They were fighting well just now. How could they be killed in the blink of an eye? How could the Blood Clothing Pavilion disciples be so strong? Junior brother Shui, go to hell. The 2 flew into a rage and hit out their palms at the same time. Instantly, gang spirits swept over like huge waves, as if to tear Yushu into pieces. At this time, Xiongming moved his body, and the black air around him soared into the sky. Several huge ghost shadows walked out of the black air, each of which had the strength of spiritual aperture realm. As soon as the ghost shadows appeared, they fearlessly entangled the four people. Four gang spirit realm experts. It was a piece of cake to break the ghost shadows. The ghost shadows that rushed to the Yinshui sect disciples were swallowed by the wave palm force before they even got close to them. However, they didn't notice that Xiongming's figure had disappeared. At the same time, Yushu also turned around and ran away. His breath was rapidly weakening, as if he had lost a lot of his spiritual power. Seeing this, the Yinshui sect disciples hurried to catch up with him, but they didn't know that Xiongming had appeared behind them like a ghost. A pair of ferocious fist blades appeared on his arms, and the fist blades were like two evil ghosts opening their mouths and rushing forward. The two Yinshui sect disciples also noticed the abnormality behind them. They waved their arms, and huge waves rolled back, destroying Xiongming's figure in an instant. The blood clothing pavilion is just SOS. Seeing that Xiongming was killed so easily, the two people who were shocked by Yushu also felt relieved. After all, they were all disciples of top sects, and one of them was killed when they were outnumbered, which was a great blow to the Yinshui sect's face. Now that they had killed one of them, the other one was also struggling at death's door. As long as they killed these two blood-clothing pavilion disciples, the Yinshui sect's face would not be disgraced. Watch out! At this moment, the other two experts in luxurious robes suddenly shouted. The Yinshui sect disciples heard it, but before they could react, the two sharp blades had already pierced through one of their hearts. The person spat out a mouthful of blood, which contained the remnants of his heart. Then, he slowly fell to the ground with endless unwillingness. Behind him, Xiongming, who had clearly been submerged by the huge wave, was standing there. The fist blades on his arms had all sunk into the person's back. However, Xiongming could not help but gasp for breath. Obviously, he had used up a lot of his energy. Whether it was Yushu or Xiongming, they were in a state of exhaustion. However, the remaining three people did not continue to rush forward. This was because an emotion called fear had appeared in their hearts, especially the baleful aura and killing intent emanating from Yushu and Mengming's bodies. It was terrifying. Two people who had just entered the gang spirit realm had not only survived the siege of 5 gang spirit realm experts, but also killed 2 Yinshui sect disciples with horrible methods. Was this the strength of the blood-clothing pavilion disciples? However, the Yinshui sect was also a top sect. Why was the strength gap between its disciples so huge? The last Yinshui sect disciple was a middle-aged man with a goat horn beard. He said in a trembling voice, "Huayan Marquis, Seek Marquis, these two people are already at the end of their lives. Help me kill them, and the Yinshui sect will definitely reward you handsomely." It turned out that the two people were both dukes and marquis of the Thunderflame dynasty. Well, Huayan Marquis and Seek Marquis both hesitated. Seeing this, the goat horn man panicked. He hurriedly said, "As long as you kill these two people of the blood-clothing pavilion, we will give all our resources to you two dukes and marquis, and we will report to Martial Uncle that the Yinshui sect will owe you a favor." Huayan Marquis and Seek Marquis looked at each other. They were both tempted. For them, resources were not the most important thing. As a top sect, the favor of the Yinshui sect was absolutely valuable, especially when the imperial power was about to be handed over. If they had the support of a top sect, they could basically continue to enjoy a lifetime of glory and wealth. The two immediately showed their evil faces and walked towards Yushu and Xiongming with murderous intent. Mother **Cur, I didn't provoke anyone. How unlucky. But I did drag 2 of them down with me, so it's not a loss. Don't you think so? Yushu chuckled. Xiongming retreated to his side, crossing his arms and saying nothing. Seeing that the two people stopped running, the goat horn man and his 2 companions thought that they had given up resistance. But unexpectedly, a person had quietly appeared. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.